Yes, you are.
Good evening. Going to call this meeting to order. This is 6:08 p.m. This meeting was live streamed via Zoom. Will be recorded and available on our website. Could I get roll call? I'm here. Trustee Bill. Here. Trustee Yale. Here. Trustee Atherton and Trustee Paxton. Thank you very much. I have two things to report out from closed session. Item B1A, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54.957.1, the board has approved settlement by unanimous vote in the case of student and the Valley School District, which comes into $39,500 and the reimbursement for education opportunities. And for item B1C, on the assumption that the board rejects the Cameron government claim, the following should be sorry. Notice is hereby given that the government claim submitted on behalf of Cameron School, which was presented to the Mill Valley School District on September 11, 2024, was considered in closed session and rejected on a vote 4-0. Thank you. Let's see. We are going to ask for approval of the tonight's agenda. Could I get a motion? So, second? Second. Agenda is approved. Yes, thank you. If you couldn't hear Dr. Kaufman, for anyone wanting to make any public comment for any of the items on the agenda, please turn in your public comment times. They are located over here, and please turn them into Anna over here. So please get those in before the end of the superintendent report, which is coming up in a few minutes. But we have our kids back, so we're really excited about this. It's been a few board meetings since we've had our kids. And we are going to recognize the Strawberry Point Green Team. So I will give this over to you.
Second year in a row having the Strawberry Point Green Team here. So I'm going to turn it over to Principal Russell and just read it more. We don't have to have kids in the board meeting. Make this over here. Thank you, parents. Thank you. And Principal Russell, take it.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask our wonderful green team. Could you all go and stand in front of Sid and Anna? Could you stand up? Because this is all about you. Okay. All right. Perfect. I am extremely proud of our
We need to shift them, Anna.
which is a volunteer student group that leads waste sorting efforts to reduce the amount of waste that our school sends to the landfill. And I am very appreciative of their hard work, and I would like to thank them for giving their time during lunch to support their peers to sort waste correctly, going into classrooms to educate their peers, designing and making posters that guide students to sort correctly and promote environmental stewardship, for doing morning announcements to give reminders and highlight students that are doing a great job, for partnering with our PTA to implement solutions for reducing waste, increasing recycling, and hosting school events in a more environmentally conscious way. And there is so much more that they do. I would also like to thank Miss Hanson, Miss Crane, and Miss Thomas, who are dedicated to working with our students to promote environmental education, responsibility, and leadership within our school through advocacy and action. And I am proud, so proud of our team for working together to make Strawberry Point more sustainable and for once again earning the Zero Waste Platinum Award. Congratulations. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. I will now hand it over to Casey Fritz, who is the Senior Planner for the County of Marin, who will tell you more.
All right. My name is Casey Fritz. I work for the County of Marin as the Program Manager for Zero Waste Marin Schools. The Zero Waste Learning Schools program is a program run by Zero Waste Learning, a governmental joint powers authority that runs countywide programs that aim at reducing waste. The school program has been running since 2015 and now serves 43 public schools across Marin County, including all of the school campuses in the Valley School District. Strawberry Point School was enrolled in the schools program in the 2017-18 school year and received training, new infrastructure, and support from Zero Waste Learning staff. Since then, Strawberry Point students and staff have worked tirelessly to reduce landfill waste on their campus. The Green Team has eagerly conducted waste audits to investigate common sorting mistakes, created videos on waste topics to educate their peers, and brainstormed creative ways to reduce waste in their community. They transitioned their annual Mad Dash event to be zero waste, and by doing so, prevented the use of over 1,000 plastic cups. The Green Team also helped the student magazine Fast Forward become fully digital to reduce paper usage and planned a costume swap for Halloween to help reduce the need to buy new costumes. Strawberry Point School has an incredibly dedicated team of students, teachers, staff, and custodians that make their success possible. They have demonstrated creativity and commitment to zero waste, which is why they became the very first school to be certified as platinum in the Zero Waste School certification process in the 2022-23 school year. And I'm honored to congratulate them on a second year of platinum certification for the 2023-24 school year. I can't wait to see what they accomplish next. I'm very
All right. So I will present our award to Neil, and then Neil, you want to pass it along so that everybody can take a look. You guys earned this. I'm so proud of you. And Miss Hanson, I know you're here. Come on up because you're helping me. All right. Good job, everybody. Yeah, you hold, don't hold it. It's like a football trophy. Good job, everybody. And thank you so much for coming. Parents, thank you for bringing them out this evening.
Connor.
So important
Connor.
to recognize them for all the great work that they're doing. So thank you so much.
Feel free to leave. You do not need to wait for us to continue our meeting. But thank you so much for coming.
Oh, that's Diane.
Thank you so much, Strawberry families.
Okay, we are going to move on to our agenda. Next thing we have is public comment on non-agenda items. I have 4 people. So we can have 3 minutes each. If you don't have we only have 4. The clock's right here, so I'll call one speaker at a time. Please pay attention to the timer. And the first person is switched off.
I don't think I will need 30 minutes, but good evening. I'm coming to you as a product of elementary public school, middle public school, and a high school public school as a U.S. government employee and a former middle school teacher. And my wife and I moved to Mill Valley because we value public schools immensely, and we really hope to send our child to public school here. And right now we have a 2.5-year-old daughter in need of full-time PK, because we're full-time parents. And as you can see, or may not see, I come from a heritage of Chinese culture. And we are hoping to send our child to Marin. And I know this has been a thing that has been now in the Marin IJ. I know that you guys are obviously having meetings, and this school matters a lot to us because it's the only one really here that provides this type of care and also this immersive experience for our daughter. And I desperately want to support both the public school as well as the survival of the school in its current location. I know there's complexities that I am completely unaware of. I know there are closed meeting sessions. I know there's a lawsuit. I know there's all these things happening. And just want to ask and urge the school board to really continue to have an open conversation about just how to move forward, because I absolutely, as a middle school teacher, know how important it is to have space for staff and to have the support that all the teachers in the school district need. And I'm hoping that there's some way that, we can find some way to move forward and have everyone have a win-win outcome. So thanks very much for all the hard work you're already doing, and hopefully we'll continue to do in this issue.
Thank you. Jessica, Isle?
Hello, my name is Jessica. I am from Clement. I'm interested. I appreciate the district being willing to make changes to the current placement programs, but I would also like to advocate for the students affected by this year's placement values that has led to the changes being made. My child was in first round and he didn't get a preference, but then we were then placed in the farthest school. Our family sends 8 to 10 hours a week meeting. We haven't been able to attend extracurricular events at the school because we can't just walk over like other families can. City's really had a huge negative.
We're trying to fix it. Thank you.
The only thing that's getting us through this is the hope that the board and district are listening and can help us find some suitable solution. These are not just numbers on a paper test. These are children, and it's unsustainable to put them in a private school for 6 years. I think we can all agree that there's a need for another classroom added to this year's group of students. I feel like first grade restored and that is still makes the most sense. But please consider the families that are most impacted by the current placement mistakes when you fill that class. When TK was prioritized over kindergarten needs, that was an understandable oversight. But then placement did not consider preference or proximity for so many students. My child registered in first round and we were placed in the farthest school when 90% or more of the district lives closer to that school than we do. Before you look ahead to the future, please consider those who have already been affected by the policies you're going to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Alana, please.
Hi, Jessica. I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Strawberry, Main Stage, and we're also a Camp Valley resident. And we've had a wonderful experience at Strawberry so far. The teachers, administration, PTA, hosting events. They've all made us feel very welcome. We have no reason to want to not stay there other than the fact that the community is very unsustainable for us. And also, we're just kind of the families in Camp Valley who are wanting to go to Camp Valley Elementary, which I've spoken to many. We're just feeling in this liminal state where we know the commute's not sustainable. We're hoping for a change. And are meanwhile trying to find our bearings in this new elementary school world. We're wanting our kids to, was that 3 minutes?
It wasn't reset.
Okay.
So
Okay. Sorry. No, it's okay. Yeah, we're wanting to like connect and like be involved in school activities, like Jessica was saying, attend them. It makes it much harder to drive home 15 to 20 minutes and then come back. And, it really hit me. We were at back to school night and Sage is in Miss Starfis's class. She's wonderful. And she was saying, the reason that I love teaching kindergarten is because this is the place where like lifelong friendships are formed. And I literally started crying because I just didn't feel that that was necessarily true, because we're really like looking to be with the community that we had formed in Tam Valley, and we're trying to make new friends, trying to get involved, but also like anticipating
a move. And the reason really is the commute. I have 2 children. One is 2.5. If we were to be, continue on at Strawberry, it would be 9 years of making that commute. And for some parents, that's okay. And they've accepted that and are really happy to do that. For us, it's a real hardship. So given that perspective, I'm just echoing the petition to add a first grade to Tam Valley. And I feel like there's mutual benefit, not only for our particular group, but of Tam Valley residents who got placed at Strawberry, or other, residents who got placed at Strawberry because of availability at that school. But I think there's an opportunity to balance class sizes over the district, because Tam Valley's class sizes are big. So I don't really know how the numbers are going to shake out. I know you guys are working with a demographer and trying to figure all that out, but I just wanted to show up and say that this is something I care about and I hope for, and that I hope that the placement process as it's being reviewed will find a better way to incorporate placing kids with their local school, which I know is a consideration, but I think could be considered in a way that creates more equity and doesn't affect disproportionately a neighborhood like Tam Valley in the way that it has historically. So yeah, I'm kind of, I'll be curious to follow the conversation and see how this problem gets solved. But I really hope that in the future that the conversations that I have with parents aren't overwhelmingly, with sentiments of there's such a lack of transparency. I don't know why we're here. I'm frustrated with the process. I think there's a real opportunity for improvement. And I have every faith that, this wonderful board can come to a solution that works for the most parents, and really shifts that to one of feeling confidence and trust and understanding of how it's all working and why everyone is where they are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Liz Couch. Yeah. Read that. It's working.
Oh, hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. You all know who I am by now. I've been coming for a while, but my name is Liz Couch. And as you know, our daughter Addie was placed at Strawberry Point, even though it wasn't, our first or second choice, and is the farthest school from our home. After attending Edna McGuire for TK, which was our second priority choice, she has now been in 3 different schools in 3 years without ever attending her neighborhood school. While I very much appreciate the district's efforts to revise the enrollment process for future families, these changes won't address the immediate challenges faced by families like ours. I kindly urge the board to consider adding a 3rd first grade class to Tam Valley to accommodate students on the wait list and ease class sizes. This would benefit not only our families, but also the school, the teachers, and the broader community. I want to say that I love Strawberry, the teachers, the administrators, the staff, the students, the parents, the PTA. I love everything about the school. And if I lived in Strawberry, I would be over the moon. But I don't. I live in Tam Valley. Neighborhood schools are essential for fostering a sense of belonging and connection among children and families. They provide opportunities for children to develop socially and academically alongside their peers and neighbors. For families, proximity to school reduces the daily burden of long commutes, which also alleviates traffic congestion and reduces the environmental impact of our car-based transportation. The current situation, where we spend over an hour in the car each day, is a strain on our family and contributes to unnecessary environmental and traffic issues. I just want to thank you so much for this continued opportunity to share my perspective with you all. I know this job is really difficult, and I know you hear that we can all come to a resolution that really works for all Mill Valley families. And I thank you so much for your time and your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Next we have a CSEA update. Do we have, oh, here's Pat. Sorry, Pat. Oh. Okay, please, thank you, Danielle. Oh, okay, that's it.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle DeBaugh. I teach here at the middle school. I'm going to add something in. I love teaching here at the middle school. It's a great school. I love the kids. I love my job. I love working here. I teach English language arts and 2 reading elective classes. I'm here to make comment tonight about the iReady reading assessment. My comments pertain to the use of iReady specifically at the middle school. It's my hope that you'll consider listening to teachers and consider perhaps not renewing with iReady in the future. In the 2019-2020 school year, in the year of the pandemic started, the middle school ELA teachers worked with the district's director of curriculum and instruction, which was Wendy Holmes, and we came to a consensus as a department and with her about piloting a reading assessment program. Although we did start the pilot, it didn't come to fruition because of the pandemic. However, when we returned from the pandemic, we were told that the district had selected iReady for us to use, and that was without any input from the teachers. We were told that we needed something to assess learning during these unusual times. It is now 3 years later, and we would simply ask that you pause for a moment before moving forward with iReady again next year. In conversations I've had with my fellow ELA teachers, none of us have been impressed with the iReady assessments or the lessons. There are a multitude of reasons for this, and I don't have enough time here tonight to explain all the reasons, but I'll touch on 2 of the reasons. First, the test is long and cumbersome. It takes away hours and hours of valuable classroom instructional time. Second, the students that are most in need of accurate results loathe the test and often rush through it because they are frustrated, intimidated, and confused by the strange passages iReady has selected as the basis for their test questions. Thus, those students most likely to have a deficit in reading comprehension are the ones least likely to finish the test. Let me be clear, we would like to continue to administer a reading assessment, but not this one. We invite any and all of our board members and our administrators to speak with middle school ELA teachers and seek our input on finding a new assessment that is a better fit for our students. Please consider non-renewing this dreadful assessment that makes our kids moan in agony every time we say it's time to do iReady.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for waiting.
In the last month, we've met with administration about some really antiquated job descriptions we have, and those positions have a lot of tech involvement. So we wanted to upgrade those for the employees that are using that, are in those positions. And we really want to support the new school here at the middle school. It's very important for the community, the kids, the teachers, and everybody involved in Mill Valley. And the green team at Edna is pretty awesome too. That just made me think about it because they have we have 30 totes at Edna, and if the kids didn't help me, I couldn't do it. So I just wanted to mention them as well, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we have Mill Valley Teachers Association.
Everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're gonna start off with the experience that I had this week, which is a really important, unique opportunity that our Mill Valley students have every year in 5th grade. So this year, all Mill Valley School District 5th graders will once again participate in the outdoor education program at Walker Creek Ranch. This week, Park, Old Mill, and Edna 5th graders were there, and Strawberry and Tam Valley 5th graders will attend in November. The 5th grade teachers have adjusted their planning so that students from multiple Mill Valley schools can be there together as they get ready to go to school together at the middle school next year. In addition to the sports and after-school activities that they do together, the 5th graders are able to have this experience to bond and connect before they join together at the middle school. The week at Walker Creek is truly a highlight of the 5th grade year, as well as the elementary experience as a whole. The teachers were excited to see their students thrive in this alternative learning environment this week and learn more about the world around them, themselves, and one another. The 5th grade teachers do a lot of work preparing for this trip, and the week is unlike any other week in the teaching school year. We are on call 24 hours a day to support students in a myriad of ways to ensure they're feeling secure and successful in their new learning environment. Teachers leave their families and their home lives for 4 days and 3 nights to ensure that their students do not miss out on this pivotal experience, and they do it all for a very small stipend. The trip to Walker Creek is a prime example of how students get the best educational opportunities when parents and teachers work together as a team. These trips are not possible without our fearless cabin leaders. These are our parent volunteers who leave their jobs and families for the entire week or for those 4 days and 3 nights to care for other people's children. Cabin leaders do everything with the students during their time at the ranch, from eating 3 meals a day in the dining hall to comforting homesick students and encouraging them all the way to the top of Walker Peak. Cabin leaders also support students through challenges that arise and share in their joy and wonder as they experience the amazing natural environment around them. The 5th grade teachers would like to say a big thank you to all of the parents who went this week and all of those who will go in November. We encourage you all to learn more about the unique educational program at Walker Creek Ranch if you have not already. Mill Valley teachers are proud to be a part of this ongoing tradition and continue to be dedicated to all of the hard work it takes to make it happen.
I will use this one. We're all good. Our members are really looking forward to the Global Harvest Festival taking place this month. We want to thank the district-wide DEIB committee for all of their hard work planning and putting on these incredible events to celebrate our community. You may not know this, but teachers also work with their students to create art and other displays for the district-wide DEI events. Without these teachers, the student's voice would not be as prevalent at these events. We appreciate their creativity and hard work to make this happen. Lastly, as public schools are a cornerstone of our democracy, we want to remind all of our community members of the importance of voting. By the time we meet again, the election will have already happened, and we will have election results that affect our community. As elected officials, you understand the important role you play in making policy for the Mill Valley School District. We hope that our community also understands the impact of local, state, and federal elections on the future of public education. The National Educators Association, or NEA, wrote a piece to inform voters about how elected officials shape our public schools. They said, in election 2024, it's equally important to vote in local and state races. Elected leaders at different levels of government can make or break public schools. For federal elections, the U.S. senators and representatives determine education spending for critical programs and help reduce inequalities in schools. They also set federal standards for education. For state elections, governors can block harmful proposals, such as school voucher bills, which siphon money from public education to fund private schools. They can also change state education policies and programs throughout executive orders, executive budgets, and legislative proposals. Your state senators and representatives impact every aspect of public schools, from funding and standardized testing to educators' right to organize and advocate for their students. State attorney generals can assemble task forces to examine school safety, bullying, and standardized testing. We hope that Mill Valley residents will exercise their right to vote on November 5th. Thanks for having us tonight. We will be back in November with our sunshine document on the board. And we really are hopeful for a positive bargaining season in which we all strive for a collective bargaining agreement that ensures the teaching and learning environment that students need to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. And as a previous Walker Creek chaperone cabin leader myself, I concur with everything you said about Walker Creek.
Did you feel seen? I hope so. That wasn't a joke. It wasn't meant to be rude. Sorry. I hope you did.
Whoops.
But you still need it.
Oh, no. We're going into your report.
No, we have to introduce it.
And next we will have Dr. Kaufman's report.
Now I'm running my knee certificate.
I have the perfect chair.
I know I keep running my knees straight into the top. Okay, so one of the things that we've worked on here as a district is the implementation of our new CKLA language arts program. And I wanted to take a moment and just kind of recap some first impressions, you know, glows and grows as we do this work, because it is a very big lift for our district, and it is absolutely critical that we work together and do this, and our teachers are going well above and beyond in their efforts to make sure that this very complicated but very important program is lifted for us. So again, I'm here to provide an update on successes and challenges. We know there are going to be both of those as we move forward with any new program. This is just kind of our why. The reason why we chose CKLA following a pilot project was really because on a national level, it meets expectations in a quite strong way. So both in terms of foundational skills and importantly for our community, for building knowledge, because we do have a number of students who come to us already reading at grade level. So the ability to provide them access to critical thinking and content in grade levels is very, very significant for us. Next slide. This is the program structure. Again, what happens at the K2 level is that they have 60 minutes of what's called the knowledge strand, where again, you're building content background in multiple disciplines, and then also the foundational skills. So this is where we're providing that systematic literacy instruction that ensures that our students are you know, accessing evidence-based practices. And then it moves to the upper grades, where at third grade, historically, we've always said you kind of read to learn, right? So assuming you're a proficient reader, you're going to read to learn. They're bridging the knowledge skills and the foundational skills. So in third grade, it's another 120-minute program daily. And then in fourth and fifth grade, it becomes more of like a 90-minute program. But again, the focus is on integration, so that as we prepare our students to go to middle school, they're able to access rigorous content and comprehend it. Next slide. Again, this is just foundational information about the program. Next slide. Third through fifth grade. There will be, I believe it was in one of my prior communications, where there's a link to look at what actually happens unit by unit, but we will make sure that we share that. That was something that came out as a request from our Parent Teacher Association. So again, and then for us, really, as we lift this work, we've tried to provide some voluntary professional learning opportunities. It will be the focus of our professional learning at the elementary level this year. We provided a opportunity for staff meeting feedback, which you'll see momentarily on September 11th. And then in September, we also had release days where we had the opportunity for our staff to come together and problem solve, look at what's working, what's not, give feedback, and again, continue to do the work that we're doing to implement this program. We do have 2 more dates planned this year, and you know, those are really important days. And again, I have gratitude for our teachers who are taking time out of the classroom to come and work with us to make sure that we're doing the very best we can in a collaborative way for our children. And finally, our Wednesday faculty meetings. Next slide. So successes here, you know, these are individual reflections. I won't read them all. I think one of the biggest issues for us as a district is really making sure that all of our students have access to the same tier 1 curriculum. So everybody gets the same foundational knowledge and background across grade levels. And we have the opportunity that they're receiving their guaranteed and viable instruction. You'll see that we are having successes with children and the amount of writing in Unit 1. They're excited about the knowledge strands. There's a universal feeling that students are being broadly exposed as a system. So there's a systemic approach to standards, and folks are feeling excited about the level of rigor. Next slide. And challenges. It is a big, significant time commitment for us to provide this work daily with language arts, but also in math and specials. And it's hard to juggle the constraints of a day-to-day instruction with this. There is a program, it's a very in-depth program. So trying to plan for this is like, you know, trying to learn to ride a bicycle every day. Once we get a few years into it, it'll be much easier. But right now, just the amount of time that goes into figuring out what to do next and how to make sure you hit all the programmatic components is challenging. And we knew it would be, but the struggle is real. Then we also have some of the content in the stories. You know, it's pretty Eurocentric. We knew that going in. It's content that that's a typical issue with many publishers, because they're not just publishing for California, they're also publishing for Florida and Texas. So when they look at adoptions, we really need to make sure that we're integrating culturally appropriate text as we move forward. And it's a spiral program. So every day a new skill is covered. That is the function of a tier 1 curriculum, where you're trying to cover the grade level standards, but it goes very quickly. And then finally, our children are also in their first year of implementation. So if you're a 4th grader, you haven't had K1, 2, 3, you know, so they're jumping into a new language and a new content, a new process for them as well. So that makes an additional challenge. We have contracted with Glean, who I'm sure you've seen here before, but really to kind of help us with the planning and coaching, and also to make sure that we're continuing to do the work for supporting children who need additional support to access grade level content, and also those hopefully who are above grade level and need that stretch. So we are doing instructional walkthroughs, which has been really fun, and you know, teacher coaching opportunities are available as well. These are links to resources. Again, the student at home resources is where families can find the grade level scope and sequence. And again, I think we see this perhaps frequently in our agendas as we go through change as a district, but you know, it changes the curve, right? And you start, you know, it's really hard. And as you work through, you know, and gain your skill set, you do learn that you can explore and you can integrate and you can add more of yourself and more of refinement into the work. But, you know, this will be a year where we are really going to try to get through learning how to do something that is very, very challenging for us and for our children. And here's some real kids. I think that's it. I don't know if we're going to play it. Should we play it? Can't hear. This is, I believe, Jennifer Butler's class. Edna.
Tale about the twins. Twin is describing something, right? No, it's one of the. Oh yeah.
One of the things that house kids do is really access a lot of text. So it's very fun to go across the district.
That's about they're like they're common foods that they're common fish that people eat.
All right, what's another way you sorted these fish?
I sorted these by putting them together because they both have the letter F.
And how did you do it?
By fresh water. Like goldfish, eel, piranha, and African lungfish live in fresh water.
Okay, and did you have a category that you used?
I was kind of just adding to other categories.
Nice.
So anyway, there's kids in real life. We like to see them when we can. All right, and I think that is probably the last slide. I can't remember. All right. Anyway, thank you to everyone who's working so hard to implement this program. It is a great step for our district.
Thank you so much. Next on our agenda, we have approval of the consent agenda. So I'm wondering if I can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Sorry, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda.
Oh,
right.
Wait, this is,
Yeah, consent agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't ask for items to be removed from consent agenda, but I don't think we had any. Better put that beforehand. Sorry. Next we have student learning and school programs. We have the first read, and I'm going to pass this back to her.
And Director Kate Sprague will join us up here. Our process, for those of you who are in the audience, is that we'll do a presentation. There will be opportunity for public comment, and then we will be having a board discussion, deliberation, and potentially direction to staff. And I just want to call out that what we're discussing this evening is an administrative regulation that is looking at how we enroll our students and assign them. And I absolutely want to call out that this is a transitional plan for us. I think we've heard from families over the course of the year that our current plan is disproportionately impacting families who are outside of the immediate considered neighborhood of their schools. We have what's called an open enrollment policy, which means that parent choice is the rationale for which we place students. And so what we've learned is that while our policy does prioritize siblings and proximity, that the disproportionate impact for our families is not providing an unbiased approach. So we need to rectify that as a system in the short term. And then as we're continuing to move forward, we want to continue, as you all know already, with the demographic analysis, so that hopefully we will find attendance zones and be able to really truly have neighborhood schools where we can project enrollment based on an attendance area or an attendance zone, and then define school capacity accordingly. So please, everybody, know and understand that this is a temporary approach while we wait for the demographic study results, which are coming hopefully later this spring. Next slide. So this is just some history on our current approach. In 2003, there was an effort to switch to open enrollment and as determined by parent choice. These parent preferences have been guiding our decisions over time. Historically, they've been considered in addition to special education placement needs, facility capacity, and balancing class size across the district. Additional considerations have been keeping siblings together and closest proximity to school. Again, we are wanting to make sure that every child and every family in our current parent-driven choice process has the same opportunity. The last bullet has not always created that opportunity for our families who may live in a neighborhood but may be outliers. So to reiterate, this is a transitional plan with the hope that we will be able to use our demographic study results to provide us the opportunity to create neighborhood schools. I did want to hit one more thing, which is that We are asking families to provide 5 choices. So there's been some concern about whether or not families are accessing their neighborhood schools. We're giving you the opportunity to pick your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice, meaning that most families will pick their closest home, the school closest to their home, and then the next closest. So, and we're imagining that going on down. So we do believe that preserves the integrity of the proximity to home while we work on creating a safe routes to school and attendance zones that support really, truly all of the families in a given neighborhood accessing their school. I'm gonna hand it over to Director Sprague.
Next slide, please. So next we have some tables that are similar to tables that we've had in past enrollment presentations and just wanted to provide that data now, fresh tonight. So this first table shows our current enrollment for 2024-25 by grade level. It includes the low and high class size in each grade, as well as the average class size represented by the mean. For TK and K classes, they're staffed with a 6-hour per day instructional assistant in addition to the classroom teacher, and must be staffed at a 1 to 12 student ratio. The majority of our classes are at 1 to 11 or better this year. For middle school classrooms, class sizes are provided based on the core classes, those classes that are required for all students to take, which are English language arts, social studies, math, science, and PE. Under the middle school classes, there are a few notes showing the high class size for PE, which is beyond the class size high there. The average class sizes do include the PE classes of 30 or above in those calculations. Next slide, thank you. So the next slide, this table shows the number of classes per site per grade level, as well as the number of students in those grade levels at each site. So our largest grade right now is 5th grade with 261 students, then 8th grade with 251 students, and then 3rd, 4th, and 7th with 241, 246, and 249 students respectively. The far right columns show the school size and the target size for the schools as they were outlined in the facility master plan in 2021. This table shows the class size average over time, the low class size for a given year, the high class size for a given year, and the average class size for a given year. I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide, please. It's the same data, so we'll stay here for just a minute. But on this slide, a diagonal is highlighted. So this highlighted path on the middle right follows one color down the diagonal, showing the class size data for one cohort of students, meaning the same group of students over time. So for example, if you start with K in the 2020-2021 school year, that topmost highlighted cell to the right of center under 2020-21, you can see there was an average class size of 19.1, a low class size in that grade of 15, and a high class size of 24. If you follow that highlighted diagonal down and to the right, you can track that cohort over time. For example, those students are in 4th grade this year, 24-25. They now have an average class size of 20.5. If you follow a row across on the table, you can see how class sizes change over time in a single grade based on the enrollment. And if you follow a column down, you can see how all grades compare in a given year. So just to note, the colors repeat. It's not the same kids every time you see a red diagonal, but only along the same diagonal. The darker stair-step diagonal line between colors is just to break up those repeating color patterns. Next slide, please. This table shows a similar tracking of cohorts by color down a diagonal, but this table shows the number of students in a grade and the number of classrooms of that grade across the district. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, this has a highlighted cohort, a highlighted diagonal down to follow a cohort over time, or again, across a row to follow a single grade level over time, or down a column to see the variance by grade level in a given year. These numbers of classes show how the number of students enrolled in a given grade clearly correlates directly to the number of classes that we need to have in that grade level. And the next slides compare that a little bit more. So thank you. So this slide compares the two previous tables aligned by year. So all the way down, you could see 15, 16, for instance, both based on the low, high, and average class sizes by year, and then the number of classes and number of students in that grade level in the table on the bottom. The colors again follow the cohorts along a diagonal. We know this is a lot of data and that it's dense tables, and we're happy to continue to bring this back in ways that we can make it more accessible or to inform other discussions as well. The next slide shows the two tables with some additional information. So these two tables both have the number of classes in each grade level and the number of students in that grade level through the years. And again, the years are aligned down a column. Starting with the 21-22 school year, there's an additional column in gray that shows the number of classrooms to accommodate that number of students based on the loading criteria currently in use for the top table. So loading classes at TK to 2 to 22 and 3 to 5 to 24. And in the bottom table, based on the loading criteria defined in the facility master plan in 2021, which was K to 5 equals 24. So loading criteria means how many students you would put in a class to consider that class full. So while the number of classes in the gray columns show the calculation to a decimal place that would be needed to fit that number of students in the number of classes based on the loading criteria, we clearly can't have fractional classrooms unless we started to talk about combo classes, which is a totally different discussion. So loading means determining when to round up or when it might be appropriate to round down, depending on how close we are to those numbers. In the top table, the number of classes that we actually had for a given grade in a specific year, the CL column, is bold if that number of classes exceeds the number of classes calculated by the loading formula by more than one class. The numbers in the bottom row of each table is a comparison of the total number of classrooms, TK5, based on the loading criteria to the actual total number of classrooms that we have in the district in a given year. We also want to note that when we were returning from distance learning in 2020, 2021 in particular, a district decision was made to hold the number of classes at those grade levels because we didn't know at that point how many students would be returning. And of course, those students also were significantly impacted by distance learning. And so you see some differences in those years in particular, and that was because a decision was made to be sure that we had the space should we be ready to welcome all the students back from distance learning.
Can you repeat a sentence? I don't want to, I missed.
So when
the loading, which one is the column of load?
Gray.
What it should be loaded versus?
Well, the gray is the way that you could calculate how many classes we need based on the loading criteria. So if we say the current practice is to load a TK or to 2 classroom to 22 students. So if we take the number of students, like if we look at 236 students in this year's K class, that divided by 22 is 10.7, the gray column there. We have 11 classrooms. So the comparison, when the numbers are bolded, that's just showing we've not just rounded up, we're one class in addition to the loading criteria based on in those years. But again, acknowledging that particularly just coming out of distance learning, we knew we were holding those classes on purpose. Okay, so now we've given you some enrollment data, and we're going to move now into what registration looks like, could look like, what we're thinking about for 25-26. So the registration process starts with priority registration for the 25-26 school year, opening in mid-January and continuing to the end of February. This means we start advertising and holding our info nights for families now, November, December, planning those, making sure families know about it, know how to enroll, are preparing the documents that they'll submit through that online enrollment process that starts in mid-January. Round 2 continues from when the priority round ends and goes until the end of the school year. Round 3 continues after the end of the school year to August 20th, the day before school starts. And then we call it round 4. We just keep enrolling students all year long when they come to us ready to enroll. And we call that round 4. So thinking about why we are here looking at potential changes to the way that we place students. Some of the impacts of our current school assignment process. Advantages to it are that we're giving 90% of families are placed at one of their top 2 choices for school assignment. Siblings are prioritized to be kept together. The community priority of walking and biking to school is supported in the current policy, and parents who do not get their preferred placements have the opportunity to remain on a wait list. When we think about some of the disadvantages that might be considered as part of this current process, when requests for registration at a particular site exceed spaces available, the families whose residents are furthest from the school are disproportionately impacted. Families who move into the area after priority enrollment are also disproportionately impacted. Students or families on the wait list can remain uncertain of their placement through the summer and even into the school year and through the school year if they're staying on the wait list. And the process for placement is significantly time consuming for staff. Yes, thank you.
Me, and I already addressed this in passing, but in essence, we use we're continuing on with the criteria we were using already for determining school assignments, which are district placement needs, and as I mentioned earlier, any special education or specific programmatic needs, facility capacity, and then class size, which, as you just saw from Kate, is generally a loading of 22 for our lower grades and 24 for our upper grades. Next slide. And then the proposed changes, first of all, we want to make sure that the work we're doing is unbiased and is supported by education code when we have an open enrollment policy. And so what we're trying to call out specifically here is that priority will be given to siblings of existing students that has, and obviously children of district employees who have been admitted. Both of the latter on the district employees is actually educational code. And then placement also by a random unbiased lottery system, which if we are continuing an open enrollment policy where parent choice is the factor that determines how children are placed, we have to have a random and unbiased process. And then finally, there's a final option here where we already have this policy. It's called intra-district transfer. And that would be followed in lieu of a wait list. So TK continues to be a district-wide program. It's not going to factor into how we do the placement here because we will need to locate children where we need to locate them based on the facilities available and the enrollment we have at our schools currently. And then again, just to kind of reiterate that we are considering the option to choose 5 schools, to preserve not only the 90% success rate that we have currently, but also to help people continue to prioritize proximity in their selection of campuses. Next slide.
So as we think about draft placement language to replace the current administrative regulation, we want to be sure we're considering siblings of existing students, as Dr. Kaufman spoke to, children of district employees, both district residents or interdistrict transfers, parent preference of school, and then the describing the priorities outlined in the district's BP and AR for intradistrict enrollment. So the way that the registration process would work is first by determining capacity. So for the upcoming school year, the district determines spaces available at each grade level at each school site based on the capacity, staffing, and programmatic needs of those schools. Next, during the priority enrollment registration window, January and February, students enrolling for the following school year and existing students looking for an intra-district transfer can register or apply for that transfer. So the students would indicate if they are a sibling of an existing student or a child of the district employee and their associated and preferred school, and students, their families, would rank all elementary schools in their order of preference. After the priority enrollment registration window closes, prior to May 1st, students are placed at their schools.
And I think one of the things that our community has asked us to do is provide more transparency in the process. So we're trying to do now, prior to beginning to recruit and enroll children, is provide that transparency.
So then when we have the enrollment for any intra-district transfer applications for the upcoming school year, then we look at the proposed school placement process after the registration. So first are any identified special education needs as determined by the Director of Special Education. Next, sibling placement, students with siblings being placed at the site of their existing sibling. And if those sibling requests were to exceed capacity at a grade or school, siblings would be placed through a random unbiased lottery process as well. Then admitted children of district employees, they'll be placed at the site of their parent or guardian's employment. Again, if we were to have requests exceed, then we would have to do an unbiased lottery process as well. And finally, for newly enrolled students, those without siblings and not children of employees, the students must be placed through a random unbiased lottery process. So next, walking through the lottery process, when registering for grades K through 5, parents and guardians would be asked to rank their preferences for all elementary schools. Students would be then divided into lists based on their first preferred school and assigned a random number in that list. Based on the spaces available at a given grade level, at a given site, students with that school as their first preference would be placed from those lists, starting with the lowest assigned number until no spaces remain at that grade level at that site. After all available first preferred school spaces are assigned, students will be divided into lists based on their second preferred school and assigned a new random number. The lottery process would then continue based on available spaces and continuing to third preferred, fourth preferred, and fifth preferred school if needed. If a student or family did not rank all the schools or the school ranks did not have capacity when the student's number is reached, that student would be skipped and be placed randomly in a school with capacity at the end of the lottery. So again, the goal is first placing siblings of currently enrolled students and children of employees, then dividing the students into groups based on their first preferred school. That is their neighborhood school as defined by the family, because the families are setting that preferred school, the same as our current policy. From there, the students in those groups would be assigned a random number within that group for their first preferred school. At each school then, through those lists, starting with the lowest number, students would be assigned to that school, their first preferred school, until capacity at that school is reached. And we would continue with each site based on the first preferences from there. And then if we need to, moving on to second preferences and third preferences. Next slide.
And as I mentioned previously, we have an existing policy called an intra-district transfer. And that policy is really, in any given year, children who are placed at a school that wish to transfer to another school can, in the enrollment priority registration window, as we're calling it, opt to submit an application for transfer. And then again, as space is available, they will be assigned along with other children. In this case, it helps us to avoid the wait list and the stress on families, and also the wondering of where you are on the wait list and how that matters and how we figure that out. That's just something that we find untenable, and we don't believe the wait list is healthy for children or families due to the ambiguity and the ongoing continuation of potential transfer. We don't think it's good for children to transfer schools mid-year. It's not healthy for relationships with their teachers. And so the ongoing annual intra-district is a very, very common practice. And we had a policy. So this evening, you'll see a draft of the policy, which actually addresses the fact that we don't have attendance areas yet. And so it's contingent upon us developing those.
Okay, so now thinking about some of the impacts of this proposed school assignment process, we know this is an effort to change a practice that's been in place since 2003, and that practice has historically served most families by providing them their school preference. This approach does preserve parent choice. As in the past, we anticipate that approximately 90% of families will receive their first or second choice. The changes are being made in an effort to ensure that parents receive their schools of choice in the most equitable process possible, which is by a random lottery. We know that we cannot develop a policy or regulation likely that will make everyone happy. So this is a trial effort to make a change in the direction of a positive direction, and then monitoring and adjusting for 26-27 for the next school year, including with additional information from our demographic study. We also acknowledge that the random unbiased lottery process may mean that some families who would have been placed previously at a site due to the priorities of school preference and close proximity may not be placed at that school in this proposed policy. We do want to clarify that this does not mean we're planning to move students that are already assigned to schools in upper grades, just that those families who had been placed based on the previous policy may not have received that placement were we using an unbiased lottery system. The waitlist process, as Dr. Kaufman has spoken to, will be replaced by the intra-district open enrollment process, which we acknowledge eliminating the waitlist is best for families and students by ensuring school placement notification with as much notice as possible for families and then a consistent placement for the full school year. Okay, so if we think about what this timeline would look like, right now we are going through the proposal of the process for 25-26 and input gathering related to that. In November, we would hope that we could approve a proposal primarily because we need to then, if we're going to implement it for the 25-26 school year because of when enrollment and registration starts. December 24, we continue with the recruitment and outreach related to kindergarten registration, having the parent info nights. In January and February of 2025, that's the priority registration period. April to May is when we do those student placements. April through June is when we're anticipating the demographer results. And so hopefully we can start discussing things already then and gathering input related to those. And then next fall at this time, looking at revision to the policies and regulations for the 26-27 school year based on that demographic study and how this goes. It's a temporary proposal to align with equitable school assignment as defined by education code when school districts do not have neighborhood schools. Our goal eventually is attendance zones and preserving and defining neighborhood schools, which is why we have engaged the demographer. We know we need to start enrollment for 25-26, so we need to bring in proposal now. We also have plans for a survey of TK2 families to be sure that those families that may be most impacted by this have the opportunity for input here tonight to gather input from you and the community as well, and looking at other ways to continue gathering that feedback too.
And I would just say we're looking at the TK through 2 world because we think those families are most recently aware of the process, either as a incoming kinder family that's already TK, current kinder family, or a first and second grade family that, you know, probably remembers what it was like, maybe more than a 5th grade family that's looking at heading off to middle school.
So I know we're going to have a lot of trustee questions about this. Before we do that, we're going to go into public comment. We have 8 people. Looks like 4 in person and 4 online maybe. And again, the clock is here. Thank you, Kate. You want to come back? Yeah, fine. Thank you. We have Ann Silcox. And after Ann, we have Jessica Isles.
My phone doesn't die. Hi, everyone. That was very helpful. So thank you for including all that information. I have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner at Tam Valley. So my kids are into their school, but I'm very concerned about the overall issue and supporting these families in where they're placed. I love that you're working on this issue and looking to revise it, but it feels like an interim proposal is a distraction from overall working on this issue. I've talked to a lot of families today who are really confused about this and what it might mean for them and don't see the equity in doing this as a short-term rushed process. It's great to get community input. I love all the ways that you're getting community input, but I think focusing more on a long-term solution and really working with the community on that solution would be what I would hope you would consider. I also look at, it feels like there's a simpler and more effective option for the short-term pressure and focus you're getting, which is to ensure that you're providing enough classrooms at the most preferred schools. So it does feel like more transparency on capacity and your decision now would really help you get the process moving if you want it approved. Having uncertainty around capacity, I think will just continue to create stress and uncertainty and resistance from the community. So I think getting that capacity now would be really important. And then I'd also say, that's, I think, what people care about, having the right number of classrooms at their preferred sites. And then I think also just clarifying to the community what small class sizes really means to the board and to the superintendent. I think for a lot of families in Tam Valley, it's closer to 20. And I know you're not going to like land on a number and what have you, but I think it's significant from a perspective of being in a classroom of 23 or 24 kids or 19 or 20. And I do think that cutting that here and there will have a disproportionate impact on the ongoing quality of education we're providing, especially for the lower grades. So when I look at all those numbers, I don't want that to be, I worry that some of this is a little distraction from some of those that I think are bigger issues. I also think more clarity you can provide on what is coming next, because if you're talking a lot about neighborhood schools, this feels like kind of the opposite of neighborhood schools in some ways. So I don't want this group to be disproportionately impacted in that way. So I think as much transparency as you can also provide about what your future plan is and how that will shape will also greatly help getting the community behind this if that's what you want. But at this point, it does kind of feel like a distraction from some of the bigger issues that we care about and that we'd like to work with the board on, as far as small class sizes, having the right number of classrooms, and just really connecting schools and neighborhoods and really keeping those communities together. Thanks.
Jessica? Hi, I have a lot of questions, but I know you're not supposed to answer me back, so I'm just going to ask questions. First of all, is the kinder ratio supposed to be 1 to 11 as indicated by the chart? Because we have 5 classrooms that are 1 to, oh, I'm sorry. I know the kinder ratio on the chart says it's supposed to be 1 to 11, and we have 5 classrooms that are that have 23 students, so they wouldn't fit that ratio. But it sounds like it, and it sounds like the loading data for kinder is supposed to be 22, but there are classrooms that have 23. So why is that? Is there a plan to make it so they're at least down to 22? And then TK and K need special facilities. Where are you going to find the special facilities if we don't seem to have them for more TK classrooms? What's the plan when classes exceed 22 for TK, if there just happens to be a lot more coming in? And I understand that there's a demographer working on that. Are we supposed to apply for transfers? Are the interdistrict transfers a lottery system? I mean, it sounds like, because I know a lot of people are going to be on the transfer list for Tam Valley, but so is it then a lottery? I don't understand that part. And if you're denied an interdistrict transfer for a whole year, do you get priority for the next year, or is it just you just continually be denied over and over again? And are you still intending to keep 2 classes per site per grade as a directive? I know it's not a policy, but that is a directive you gave before. And then what happened to the survey? I know Kate was doing a survey last year. Is there information about that? I think I must have missed it, or is this based on the survey? People said that they wanted a lottery. It does kind of feel like very complex. And I understand that she's the data scientist, she's like the brain, but the board can be the heart for this and say, like, some of this is a little bit off, like this, just again, making our children these numbers on a table can't be the way that we all look at it. I understand that the business side needs to, but the board can be the heart and say, like, some of this is still off and we need to continue to work on this new plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Scott Stillman, and after Scott, we have Aaron Fraser.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for all the great work that you do. We really appreciate you listening to all of us and considering what we have to say. So wanted to start off with that. I've got 2 kids at Tam Valley Elementary School, 1 in kindergarten, 1 in 4th grade. I'd ask that you do not remove proximity as a factor in the interim placement process. I was stunned, frankly, to see this idea being considered, because I feel it's going in the exact opposite direction of what families want and does not address the many issues that displaced families have had this year. I think removing proximity will harm our school communities and, importantly, distract from concerning issues like class size, in particular, adding a third class to the first grade at Tam Valley Elementary, which people spoke to earlier, and I would really second all the comments that they made. And I thought they did a great job explaining the need for that third class. So thank you again for all your work and hearing me out.
Thank you. And Aaron.
Hi, I'm back. I'm Erin Frazier. I'm a fifth grade teacher and MBTA co-president. I just saw a line on slide 18 about based on spaces available at a given grade level at a given site. That's how people will be placed. And I encourage the board and district administration to be very transparent about how you're determining if a class has spaces available and what your planned loading numbers for each grade are. Despite what the public may think, there are no class cap numbers in the collective bargaining agreement between MBTA and MVSD. Instead, there is contract language that encourages MVSD to prioritize small class sizes, especially in the primary and intermediate grades. In past practice, the district's loading numbers, which do not directly align with the class size language in the certificated CBA, have been used to determine if space is available. This has led to grade levels with significant discrepancies in class sizes at the same grade level at different school sites. You can see this in our district right now, as shown in your presentation. Our class size low in kindergarten is 18, while the class size high is 23. Our class size low in third grade is 18, while the class size high is 22. Sometimes this occurs through natural attrition, but other times this occurs because district administration determines that space is available and allows students to move off the wait list to move to a school where classes are larger at that grade level than at their current school. The board and district administration need to be transparent about target loading numbers for each grade level. I saw the small print on some of the slides in this presentation about previous and current loading number practices. I would like to know what the planned practice is for 25, 26 and beyond and see it posted on the district website so that our community knows where the board and district admins stand on this issue. While I understand the importance of families being enrolled at their preferred school, especially when daily travel time is a factor, I think that district admin and the board need to consider the daily impact that differences in class sizes in the same grade level at different school sites have on teaching and learning. People often ask teachers if class size really matters. I can say without hesitation that it absolutely does. When you're looking at the enrollment policy, I want to remind you that programmatically and instructionally, the impact of class size is seen at every moment in the school day. The student to teacher ratio directly impacts the amount of time that teachers can spend with each student, making connections, differentiating learning materials for their level, providing encouragement to help them succeed through challenges, pre-teaching and reteaching, answering questions, and prompting them to continue to grow and improve in their work. I've heard this board express a strong interest in all Mill Valley students having a very equitable and comparable educational experience regardless of school site. And I encourage you to embrace that emphasis on equity when you're talking about class sizes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 people online. So we'll go 2 at a time just so they're kind of ready. We have Brendan Mitchell first, and then we'll have Cambria Klein. Okay, then we have James Isles and Ward Pendaris.
Hi, my name is James Isles. Can't be there in person because I have to take care of my son. My wife is there already. This kind of seems like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, the biggest problem with the enrollment in this last year was kind of 2 critical flaws. One, which was under capacity at Tam Valley. I think there's been enough people speaking about restoring the third the third kindergarten class and third first grade class, which traditionally Tam Valley has had, which because it's always had the capacity. I'm not sure why it was removed in these last years, but obviously it's not going well for anybody. And then just the proximity system not really working when you have preferences being pulled over it, which is why Strawberry Point has maybe a bit of a problem pulling in people from the Strawberry community, and some of them go to Edna. None of those problems are really getting solved by going to a lottery. I think it'll anger a lot of people, especially ones that right now, according to the schedule, you'll be talking to them after you've approved this, that are in TK thinking that they have a good shot at going to their preferential school, or at least their proximity school, or at least one of the two. But with the current system, that's kind of unlikely for a lot of people. So that doesn't really solve those problems. The wait list, I'm happy to hear that you guys don't like that either, because it doesn't really work for anyone. A year-long lock on intra-district transfers, I don't know is the best solution, but at least is being approached, so I appreciate that. That is more transparent. On the same topic of transparency, I too wonder where the results of the survey are, because the 90% approval rate, I mean, I really have to wonder where that's coming from, just from the anecdotal evidence I have from the people that go to Strawberry with me that are from Tam Valley and Almonte, or the other people that I know had to transfer. I don't know how you can get 90% when I can think of at least 20 odd families that aren't particularly thrilled. And that puts me at least 10% down out of 220 or so, right? So my math is right. I can imagine there's a few other people that aren't particularly happy either. So I'm curious where that numbers come from, because that's come up twice and I've seen those data that back it up. I mean, you don't owe me any data, I suppose, but still, it does seem spurious to just throw the number out there without any kind of credible, visible data for the public. So yeah, I mean, I think, and just doing this for 1 year, is this a trial for 1 year? Is it a trial to see if it works and then keep it for longer? And honestly, like, what is the goal? Because this doesn't really solve the underlying issues that were from last year, which again is more about capacity planning than anything else. And it's probably not going to solve and it's obviously not going to solve the issue of proximity based or neighborhood schools either. So I don't know why you would do this. You could continue the system you have now, flawed that it is, for another year until you have demographer reports and make it neighborhood schools, or you can do this and potentially anger a lot of parents. So I'm not sure what the plan there is. But I appreciate people taking input and attacking this, because I do think it needs to be fixed. I just don't know this is a particularly good solution. And that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you. Do we have Ward online? Okay, then that is it for public comment. Thank you everyone for public comment. I'm going to turn this over to, could I invite Director Kate Sprague back up, please? Thank you. And I will turn this over, because I know we have got trustee questions, and Yoonhee, or Trustee Yu put her hand up first, but then Trustee Katz and
lots of questions. I have lots of questions, as you know. My one question I have is, of all the schools last year, and you say 90% overall families got their first choice versus second choice. Which school had the least amount of families allocated to their preferred school? And why is that the case?
Tam Valley had the lowest number of families receive their first choice from those who who chose Tam Valley as their first preferred school. And it was because the number of people who requested Tam Valley exceeded the number of spaces by more than the other sites that were available at that school.
Well, let me ask a different question. They got placed at Strawberry. Why was it necessary to have 2 classes at Strawberry? Because it didn't seem like they had enough demand to have 2 classes at that school.
Because there has been a practice of 2 classes at every grade level across the district.
Why?
There has been board direction around that in previous years, as well as language that we will provide that for our teachers in terms of collaboration and being able to have 2 classes. It's great for kids when we can have 2 classes, because you're not with the same students every year. And so when enrollment has been less, we have had to make the decision to sustain 2 classes, even when the requests for a school have not necessarily met 2 classes for that school.
So what percentage of Tam Valley families got their first choice?
So
the second choice. Yeah, first and second choice.
So from the first round, or the priority round of registration, by the end of our placements for this year, the total percentage of round 1 families who got their first preference, or the preference that they put on the wait list for Tam Valley, was 64%.
How does it compare to other schools like Old Mill, Edna, Strawberry, and Park?
We were able to provide 100% of families at Edna McGuire and Strawberry Point with their first preferred placement.
Yeah.
And 93.9% of Old Mill families, 93.3% of Park families.
And who drove the decision that there needs to be 2 classes per? Because I don't remember this board deciding there needs to be 2 classes per grade. So I just want to understand the history behind it.
We do placement as an ed services team, and we made that decision as a team.
Okay.
Based on board guidance.
It was based on previous board guidance prior to my arrival. That was what we had been given as the criteria.
Okay.
Prior to this board,
Correct.
really?
Right.
Okay.
Historically.
Has been. Trustee, I'm sure you have more questions.
I have lots, yeah.
So just to clarify, because I know some questions came up around capacity. So first of all, the 1:11 ratio includes the teacher's aide that's in the TK in kindergarten classrooms, correct? And then with the loading, the 22, that's not a cap that we put on the class, right? Because we have to account for potential additions for people who move in or come in future rounds. Is that correct?
It is not a hard cap.
Okay. All right.
Do you want me to? Yeah. I think, again, historically, there is no min or max in our contract or in our staffing. For purposes of analysis, we'll use 22 as our loading for the elementary and for the K through 2. And then 3 through 5, we're looking at 25, right? 24. So again, trying to make sure that their classes are staffed there until we understand fully the impact of our demographic study, because we may have some other flexibility when we look at school structure based on the number of students enrolled, but we don't have that yet. So for transparency, it would be 22 max, I think, and 24 max. And again, every now and then you have another kid show up that's extra and they don't come in groups of 20 or 24. So we're definitely not going to be adding a full-time equivalent staff member for one child. So that's part of the balance that we're trying to do.
And I think there were some comments made about Tam Valley specifically, but historically, given you've been with the district for a while, has this exclusively been a Tam Valley problem, or have you seen this happen to different areas of the community over the years?
It has happened at various sites throughout the community in the time that I've been with the district.
Okay, thank you. And I myself can attest to when I moved here in 2019, Old Mill and Park were the hot schools. And then during the pandemic, then suddenly they had capacity, and then it was Edna and Tam Valley. And so everybody kind of seems to take a turn depending on where the homes are selling and the children are moving in.
And in addition, I would just add that it is also significantly based on the number of students we have enrolling for a grade. So when we have more students enrolling for a grade, we can fill more classes for that. But the fewer students that we have, the more we're looking at where we have classes and how many of those classes we have.
Okay. Thank you. And I think I maybe had another question, but I'll come back to it if I recall.
I'm still percolating everything. I do want to understand, does our union contract require every site classroom to be equal? And does equal mean like within the 20 to 24 range? Because to Dr. Kaufman's point, kids don't show up in batches. So are we saying like, where's our flexibility there?
I'll take that. I think there is no minimum or maximum in our contracts. So I think what we need to clarify, and this is like school capacity, where we need to say, okay, when we're looking at a given classroom, our ideal max again is going to be 22 or 20. Again, I'm waiting for the demographic study to tell me how exactly our staffing should look. And then again, the target would be 22 in the elementary, early primary grades, and 24 at the 3rd through 5th grades. And then of course they don't always fall that way. And then in terms of school capacity, I think we're finding that really, and this is not just in terms of enrollment and in these conversations, but really we need to be loading our largest schools with 3 classes in primary grades, and then 2 classes at our other schools because it's max capacity. So Tam and Edna can start with 3, and the remaining three campuses could start with 2. We do anticipate having 10 TK classrooms, and so that's a factor that will impact that ratio that I just addressed. So while we're trying to be transparent about school capacity, we also have a mitigating issue where we've been added an entire grade level now that was never really anticipated in any of school facilities development in our prior work. I did want to capture though that our wait list, like people who are already on the wait list, you're not getting taken off a wait list. We're not changing you up. You're going to stay on the wait list and we'll continue. This is for the entering families that would be kindergarten placement moving forward. And to Kate's point, I think the reason why we're doing this is because you see now that there is significant discrepancy in the access for students at one particular site and one particular neighborhood compared to the other campuses. And so when 57% of your children in one neighborhood get access and 100% in two other schools do, it requires us to look at something different while we're waiting for the neighborhood, the attendance results or the demographic study and enrollment results, which we hope will give us neighborhood schools. Historically, I think we had too many children for neighborhood schools, which is why we probably went to parent choice as we were growing. My hope is with declining enrollment, we can make neighborhood schools viable and again, address in the short term the disproportionate displacement of children. It does, however, mean that some people, you know, when fair is fair and we're using a random unbiased process, that does mean that someone living 0.3 miles from one school might lose their place to someone who's living 5.4 miles. And that's what fair looks like when you're using an unbiased process. Again, ideally, we are moving forward to a neighborhood school where we have a significant catchment that we define in advance. May not be exactly what the neighborhoods we think look like right now, because as some of you know, we have some schools that were neighborhood schools that are leased, again, due to our low enrollment. So there are some places where there's some nuances where there were campuses that were considered neighborhood schools and they are no longer in the neighborhood because they're leased. So hopefully that addresses part of the question.
So there was nothing, because again, I think people are just a little bit need to do the math on classroom size. It's like, you can't, like, if you have 24, it's not going to necessarily sustain additional classrooms. So then the question is, do parents want to have the priority of being at the school they want, recognizing what that 1 or 2 student difference is, or do they want to be at a different school that would have a different capacity? Because the math doesn't divide, like, right? We all have to understand the divisions don't necessarily work. So one other kind of not understanding this, is there a scenario where we can bifurcate the approval of a third classroom at TAM without touching this thing? Like, why is this coming with it? Like, is that a scenario?
I'm sorry. I kind of wonder the same question because it seems to be one school or 2 school problem, one with excess demand and the other one was not enough demand.
But if we don't have a classroom, if we have a range options, is that a scenario?
I think, you know, again, it would require us to do some investigation with staff and also families, because I think there's an understanding that if we can have the smallest classes possible by balancing district-wide, that's one advantage to children. And then there's another competing interest, which is if I can be in my neighborhood school, you know, I'm okay being at 24. And so that's the liminality that we're in right now and that we need to investigate. That won't be solved immediately because, again, we need to look at our enrollment overall. Like one example could be you could do you know, like Reed School District does, where in places where you want more balanced lower classes, you do K2 and a 3-5 option. And that means you can run smaller groups of, you know, 7-year-olds at one campus and smaller groups of 9-year-olds at another campus. Those are all the things we have to figure out. And our policy and practice are somewhat competing on those. And again, part of, I think, the reason why we had 2 classes at a given school site was because of the desire to have collaboration. I think at this point, we're reevaluating that.
looking to touch any of that.
Right.
That's what I'm saying is like, is there a scenario where we don't touch that, where we don't have data? We are in the process of a demographic study. We're in the process of all this, hopefully helpful information coming. So is there a scenario, given that we don't have a contract restriction on our class sizes, can we just add a classroom to TAM
and so
without
touching the policy?
Without touching
the administrative regulations.
this interim thing.
We're planning on defining capacity at Tam Valley and Edna as 3 primary classes. That won't, like, so
you're already
we're rolling.
saying
Yeah, we're already rolling. Correct. It won't necessarily, if the demand by parent choice exceeds the ability to enroll those students, that's where we start getting into disproportionality. We don't believe that, we believe by adding that extra class, it will help us in multiple reasons, but at the moment, we cannot necessarily guarantee that there aren't going to be, 30 or 40 more parents that choose a certain school. I mean, this is what we've seen. This is historically why my first meeting here was people coming to advocate for an extra class at Edna. So, historically, sometimes demand exceeds space. In that case, we won't have another process other than this disproportionate process. So what we're trying to do in the short term is create a fair and accessible process so people aren't disproportionately impacted while we get that demographic data.
I understand, I appreciate that. I think though the concern is there is confusion around the interim process, and if our solve is addressing if the third first grade classroom solves the immediate issue, can we take more and I assume you can, without policy changes, allow people to rank 5. Can we at least just address this without jumping into this this whole situation?
We could just remove the regulation, and then I mean, we could keep it the same rate as now too. Again, it's just the challenge is going to be it's disproportionate because it is not what's driving enrollment. When we think about the scattergrams that some of us have seen, like it's not necessarily I want to be at my neighborhood school. It may be, there's a new program at one school and, all of a sudden everybody wants to go. I don't know. This is my first time going through this process here in the district. And what I witnessed is that we're displacing people disproportionately. We can add that third class. But what I don't know currently is what our TKs are going to look like. And TK facilities will impact how we define capacity. I mean, I don't, if they're 10 or 11 or 12, which I can't imagine there will be, we're going to be in that situation again where we don't have the space to put kids and we're going to have to look at what capacity looks at a given site, which then puts us back into perhaps you don't get the school you want based on other things. So I don't, I'd like to be able to say that and I'll defer to Kate, putting 3 should, I don't know that you have more history with the district in terms of how enrollment and choice fluctuate, because it's not just the numbers that dictate choice.
Right. I mean, we don't judge why someone has put a school as their first preference. We don't check whether that is the closest school to their house or not. The current process says that we place the siblings, we place the employees, and then we look at their proximity to their preferred school, not their proximity to any school. And so based on their preferred school, even with an addition of a third class to Tam Valley, we still would not have the capacity at Old Millen Park, although it's a lower number of students. So we would still need a process for placing those students in an equitable and unbiased way.
So
I guess I don't disagree with you in that, like, why go through a whole process for a 1-year interim thing when we have an end goal and something that could solve. It sounds like it's maybe that could is still hanging out there depending on TK enrollment. So that sounds like that's our goal, pending the appropriate capacity and facilities given restrictions that we have. I would say that one thing that absolutely, wherever we land with this, that I think absolutely should change for the year ahead and moving forward is getting rid of the wait list and moving to an annual interdistrict policy, transfer policy. And as someone who's been through that and had kids going through the wait list where it is very murky and you don't know where things stand because there is only so much that can be disclosed. So you live in purgatory for a year and you hope for a particular outcome. Your kids are waiting because you're saying, don't get too comfortable. And you can't really plan for childcare and what's going to happen for that year. And so it's probably causing greater anxiety in our children. It's absolutely causing greater anxiety for families. And for teachers, they can't settle in with their groups for that year. So being able to say, this is it for this year, let's look at where we stand for the year ahead. I wholeheartedly think that we should make that change sooner than later to stop this process, because I've heard a lot of people in the past, Old Mill Valley, say, this is a process that works and don't really know how it works, but just trust the process. And that doesn't feel very good for people who are going through it or their children, and it doesn't always work. So I would fully support making sure that we, at a minimum, change that. Proximity, I raised this question before, but just wondering if we could put like a half-mile boundary or something around each school, just to say, like, for the sake of the climate and our goals around kind of trying to reduce congestion and increase the number of kids who can walk and bike to school. Obviously, there's the equity question, but just wondering, like, have we considered adding in that one layer of just like, this seems like an obvious circle around this school, and this automatically goes here, assuming capacity.
Right. I guess I probably should defer to Kate again, but we have considered it as there's a number of overlaps. And again, it's the parent choice isn't what the location isn't driving, and it's parent choice driving it. And then of course, you know, space is available in a given year. So I think for us, I mean, we did not want a lottery. Like the whole process of writing this and trying to figure out how it would be fair and equitable, I would have loved to do it some other way, but we couldn't figure out a way that was fair and equitable. And every time we talk to our lawyers, they're like, everybody else does it by lottery. San Francisco is changing it now, but Berkeley does it by lottery. Most other places you get one choice or you get lottery, you know? And so for us, really trying to think through, if you don't get your first choice, how do we put you somewhere else, right? How is that fair? How do we pick what's fair and do it in a way that's not biased? So that's how we ended up with the lottery. And it is a very common practice, but that's why we also ended up saying 5 choices, because we were trying to capture the proximity. We're like, okay, if I'm a mom, I'm picking the first closest school to my house, and then I'm going to pick the next closest, and I'm going to pick the next, you know, and hopefully in that sequence, I'm going to get as close as possible to my home school. Again, I have to acknowledge though that it is not specifically location that is driving our enrollment. That is where we want to go. We want to be able to show this community whether or not that's possible. The narrative is that it has not been possible, and that's why we're doing choice. We now are in a smaller district, perhaps it will work. That's why we're doing the study. And in the short term, it's very difficult. I mean, Kate and I are the people who sit with these families who are displaced, and it is painful to sit there and have to say the same thing over and over and over again, and really feel completely bureaucratic about it. So we're trying to do something different. I don't know if it's, you know, and we could remove the regulation completely, and Kate and I could try to figure it out, but then it doesn't create the transparency. And so that's why we're bringing this painful revision forward in all of its imperfections.
So can I ask my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I look at the data, and I look at, you know, there are people who request their school that are far away. Is that, if you could think, I know you gave us that data, minimum distance of 2 to 4 miles for their first choice. How exactly, what percentage of families? I didn't ask you in advance, so I really apologize. What I would like to get for future decision for before next month is understand what percentage of families who requested as their first choice far away, what percentage or how many families that were, you know, for example, living in Tam Valley requesting Old Mill. you know, what, because for me, I mean, I have to be honest, I feel like all our schools are equally good. Each school has its unique programs, you know, that are outstanding. So for me, I'm less sympathetic to make a huge change so parents get placed in the best school. You know, it just seems like we should do a better job of educating families. All our schools are great. So let's not try to accommodate you who you think is Old Mill is the best school, so you should go there. I mean, I am also concerned about there is a, you know, you heard from all these people, there was an idea of our neighborhood school, right? And that seems to be a theme that we are hearing from a lot of people. It's never about, oh, my kid got placed in Edna and it's so much worse program and I'm heartbroken. It's more like we didn't get to go to our, you know, so I don't know why we have to get rid of this preference for at least being in your, you know, closest school.
Well, I think one of the challenges is when we define neighborhood, we are not currently defining that for people. They are defining that. So one person might have a definition of what the neighborhood of Tam Valley is, and someone who lives above Tam High or above and further back might also say that Tam Valley is their neighborhood school. Someone who lives in Homestead might feel that Tam Valley is their neighborhood school. So the definition of neighborhood school right now is not being defined, and so the parent preference is what is defining their preferred schools. We're not defining that for people.
But then it's from going from Tam Valley to Old Mill is entirely different idea of neighborhood school. I understand Homestead Valley, I understand, but it, like from Tam Valley to Old Mill, I mean, it's literally 30-minute drive through, you know, all the school traffic. So I mean, that to me is like not somebody who's making the decision based upon idea, oh, Old Mill is suddenly our, you know, our home school, neighborhood school. And it's not even, we're not even Mill Valley proper. I mean, that does not seem to be a solution we should be able to solve, but rather getting people into their preferred neighbor school. But having said that, I'm a little bit concerned, given Tam Valley's data. I mean, do we care about, you know, another emphasis that we seem to have put on the fast, you know, in the past is having approximately similar sized classes. Although if you look at minimum and maximum this year, we're not achieving that. And there are many years in the past we haven't achieved it. So can we potentially end up with a situation where one school has 24 kids and the other school has like, you know, 15 kids?
Yes.
And is that something that will go away? Or is it something that will continue to worsen if we pick the neighborhood boundaries?
I don't think we can predict that at this point because we can't predict what people will select. But if we are saying that we are setting capacity, we could end up in a situation where we will fill a class to that capacity that we've defined and might not fill another class depending on, you know, the number of students that are enrolling for that year, because they don't typically come in divisible by 22 groups.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my concern. I look at grades 3 to 5th. I just feel like there are too few kids in classroom. And I did the math in Tam Valley to see if we could, you know, make this 5th grade, my son is in 5th grade, into 2 classes instead of 3. I mean, I'm unlike other parents who feel like there are too few kids in 5th grade classroom, but that's personal. I mean, that's not got nothing to do with it. So, but I realize we'll exceed the classroom limit by 1 or 2 numbers.
Well, and part of that, so part of that is due to those kids were the kids in kindergarten and 1st grade during, you know, distance learning. And so again, preserving some of those smaller classes when there was a return from distance learning, and also just the number of students enrolled across the district. When we had larger classes, when I was teaching, when I started in the district, we were up at, you know, 28 in 4th grade classes. That was because we had the enrollment for more 3 or 4 primary grade classes that then would matriculate up into 2 or 3 4th or 5th grade classes. So we don't have the number of students enrolling unless we were to combine schools to really get the number of students across a lower grade that then would matriculate into 2 smaller upper grade classes. Right now, if we load at 2 in the lower grades, we don't, there's we can't have, 44 kids in a 4th or 5th grade class. So
Yeah.
we're balancing that as well.
Well, one thing, and then, I don't know if it's still in your chart because it may have grown
off.
out of the chart, but Park School, the bubble year, and this is previous to the bubble year. Park would have kindergartens at 20 because when you got to 4th grade, you went to 30-30.
Mhm.
So that was in a way, it was, even though 30 is large, we there's no doubt about that, but it was an economy of scale that we achieved because of the high enrollment.
Mhm.
And now that we've kind of, we've dipped down. So it's much harder now because you don't have as many kids to, kind of load the classrooms. But to your point, Trustee, the success of this change is contingent on parents choosing their closest school.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, a ginormous wild card for Mill Valley.
Yeah.
And so I am more inclined to, as Trustee Katz said, is there a half-mile radius we can, I don't know if we can,
For example, just, sorry, interrupt.
No, that's because that's my biggest concern. It's like, if I love Mill Valley, I love everyone here, but if we're relying on parents to do what is logical, maybe just only to me, I think it's a lot to assume.
Kate, before when you answer that, will you also, because I'm not clearly doing the world's best job of explaining, why is distance not equitable? So when you think about that, in my head, I've lived through it so many ways over the last 2 years that I understand it, but I'm not explaining it well. So when you look at that, I think that's the example right there that addresses it. But
so when we if we have school choice, meaning parents tell us which school they would prefer their children to go to, and when those preferences exceed the number of spaces available at a site, the placement of those students, because it exceeds, has to be done in an equitable or in a fair and unbiased way. And proximity is not fair and unbiased because some people live closer than others. Fair and unbiased is something where there's an equal opportunity for every person who prefers that school to get that school, which means that we have to randomly assign the people who are interested in that school. And then everyone has an equal opportunity to be assigned to that school. One of the challenges geography-wise in Mill Valley, for example, if you live behind Old Mill School, you might be more than a mile from Old Mill, but you would drive past Old Mill and Park and Edna to go to the school that you might have been placed at because you were not in that half-mile radius from Old Mill, for example. And so those people are disproportionately displaced, as an example.
I know.
Or people who live above Tam High are further from Tam Valley than the people in the flats of Tam Valley, and further from Park than the people who live right around Park. They're more than half a mile away, but or above Homestead Valley too, they need the same access to school preference as every other family who is asking for that school.
Just to play devil's advocate. If we're calling for fair and unbiased approach to assigning kids to a school where demand exceeds capacity, aren't we already adding in factors that pull out some of the fair and unbiased by, because we only have certain special services at particular schools based on needs, we are saying those kids are being placed there because of siblings. Why not also be able to add in a layer of geography? Because to me, it just feels like an additional factor.
Ed Code states that you can prioritize siblings of currently enrolled students and children of employees and special education.
Okay, so solely based on Ed Code, but does not account for geography.
When you do not have neighborhood schools defined, when you have neighborhood schools defined, you have to prioritize the families who live within a specific neighborhood as defined or as defining that neighborhood school. You cannot displace those families for families who prefer that school but live outside of it. But when you do not have neighborhood schools defined, you have to use fair and unbiased process to place those students.
So just to restate, because of ed code, that's why we can include factors like special education needs and sibling priority, because those are already spelled out in ed code. Yes. Whereas we do not have neighborhood schools, and that's why we cannot add in that little bubble of automatic placement at that school.
Or under federal law. So special education would be a federal law that kids have a right to the placement that we believe is the most appropriate for them.
Ed code is siblings and children of employees.
And so if we defined neighborhood schools though, and we defined it as, you know, I'm just going to say the half-mile radius, that would then mean that people within that half-mile radius don't have choice. They go to that school. So it's one or the other. You either have choice and hopefully you pick your nearest school. Or you, if you live within a certain boundary, that is your assigned school, no questions asked. Okay. Outside of
applying for an inter-district.
Yeah.
Or special kind of needs, special programs that the kids need.
As defined by the special education department.
I have one quick question. So in this scenario, if we have siblings that move down but are not in K, how would they get placed? Like a first and a third grader new to the district come in, so they're not going through the K placement, they're going through the
take it away.
sorry, I didn't prep you with that.
For every round, for every grade, we would need to pick a grade to start with, because you have to start somewhere and place the students. And then that would be a currently enrolled sibling who would prioritize the matching of that upper grade or other grade sibling.
But if they can't,
so we would do this for K. We would also need to do this for new enrollees to other grades as well.
And the sibling would follow.
Yes.
So we wouldn't be splitting up siblings anymore. Okay. So we are not in the advantage slide. I missed it.
We are not currently splitting siblings either based on board direction.
Okay.
But that is one of the factors. That is one of the factors that creates some of the inequity, right? So, you know, like if we're at 20 and a new family moves in with a first and third grader, we're gonna, or maybe someone's 20 and someone's 23 and they move in and we put the first grader in the lowest class, the older student makes the other class bigger. So that is again, right, exactly. So those are that's why we're calling that out specifically.
Well, but for this system to work, don't we have to get rid of maximum number of students in a class? I mean, so let's say at Tam Valley in kindergarten, you have, let's say for simplicity's sake, 49 kids who want to go to Tam Valley. Does that mean we create 3 classes because it's beyond 24 kids limit?
We don't have a class maximum.
That's why we don't have a hard maximum, first of all, but that is also why we need the unbiased process to fill to capacity in an unbiased way.
Yes. So then you would have a class of 25, 24 instead of
the capacity would still be what the definition of capacity is for that year based on enrollment. So 20, if we say it's 22, we'd fill 44 of those requests and have 5 who then would look at their second preference or third preference.
So but I'm talking about neighborhood school idea.
Oh, so the neighborhood school idea, we still would need to address, and that's why we need the demographer's input on that to determine, because if a demographer says you're going to have classes of kindergarten, or you're going to have the number of families who want to enroll at Tam Valley, let's say, is going to be 75 students every year, then we need to know how to address that and decide if that's the right neighborhood, or can we adjust those boundary lines to keep the projected enrollment below that. That's what the demographer's role is.
Because I have to tell you, like, from my perspective, I'm really worried about our budget. Maybe I'm the only one. And so when I look at classroom size, I worry, and I'm less worried because I know upper grades, when my son started kindergarten, there were 24 kids in the class. Both classes, I felt like Tam Valley had 24 kids. And then with COVID, people went to private school and never came back or moved. So now we are at a number where there has to be 3 because of maximum classroom size. And then I understand now from your explanation that 3rd and 4th grade, who came post-pandemic, either you were anticipating more families to come back to public school, or, and now it's too late to move kids around in 5th grade. I mean, God forbid my son gets sent to Edna, you'll be very unhappy. So for example, so I understand we're stuck with it, but that will go away. These artificially low classroom size will go away, it seems like, in 3 years. So going forward, it could be more a more doable system where you could go by with the neighborhood boundaries and not have to stress out about artificially low numbers and increasing number of classroom size, or adding another class, right?
Potentially.
Okay. And how many teachers send their kids to our school? Because it's not a big number.
Well, there's a balance. There's some teachers who live in the district, and so their children would be Mill Valley School District students anyway. And then there is board policy around inter-district transfers for the children of employees, not only teachers, but all of our employees. There's specific language around who can apply for an inter-district transfer. I think it was around, I don't have the number. I think it was around 11 or 12 last year.
It's not a lot. That's
for inter-district transfer students, not for every enrolled student.
I understand, but it's not a huge number. No. So that but the way it appears, it seems like it's the first and foremost, and it will really impact.
Well, again, it's just required. It has to be prioritized, and it's prioritized for them to go to the same school as their parent works at.
So that's fine.
Trustee Katz.
Just to be extra sure, because this is a pain point, siblings and lottery. So let's say you've got 2 kindergarten classrooms and you've got more than the available spots, that capacity with siblings, then do they go into a lottery process and potentially get placed elsewhere? Or in that scenario, would they be placed in that school and we would just have a larger class and potentially
the siblings of currently enrolled students?
Correct.
So we have said that when the demand based on siblings exceeds the capacity, that there would be an unbiased lottery placement for those siblings, because that's what we're required to say by law. Practically speaking, we have not had in round one, when families have enrolled in round one, we have not had the demand from siblings exceed the capacity at any school.
Okay, thank you. And because there's been a lot of discussion about how do people rank, and I think we've all been on Nextdoor where you see those new families saying, what should I pick for my priorities? How good is this school? And absolutely, they're all amazing. Right. And I assume by default, people end up, for the most part, majority select the closest schools as their first or second choice. And it's the exception to the rule where maybe based on an after school arrangement, maybe a grandparent. I know of somebody who lives in Tam Valley who attended Old Mill because the grandparent lives right nearby and the kids would go there after school. But that is generally the exception to the rule. Has there ever been an overlay done of choices 1 and 2 with proximity just to confirm that is what people have historically done?
In informal mapping, yes. Okay. People have typically chosen as their first preference the school closest to them.
Okay, so our assumption going into this, even with the new ranking, would be that people are still number 1 or 2 likely going to be selecting what they consider to be their neighborhood school.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But I think I think the challenge with that, though, if there is a change, we'll change their preference.
If there's a change,
if we do this change, if this change is implemented, will people then change their mind and be like, well, I really want to go to that school, even though I live across from school A, but I really want to go to school B. Yeah, that's what I'm hesitant about is, given all of a sudden you have more choice now. Before, your choice was combined with proximity. So you kind of hedged your bets about I want to go there most likely.
I think the feedback has been from the community that it is proximity to them that is what matters. So we would not anticipate a large change in people selecting a school further away from them just because now they think they have a better chance because there's a lottery.
Okay.
They're picking their first and second preferred. We've been asking them to prefer.
So
Right.
just to back up that data, you gave me that data of proximity, like nearest proximity and furthest away. And is there like any way you could tell me out of the 4 mile people, like 3 mile away families, like how many of them were? I mean, I know this might be a lot, but I'm trying to understand the distribution of like, is it the median, the better number to understand exactly,
Of
you
the
know,
people who are new families
yeah,
requesting placement at a site.
yeah, like Old Mill, their preference was, for example, 0.2 and then range was 4 miles. That was the top of the line. So this is what I remember. And then the other one was 0 to 3.5 miles. So among the people who are 4 miles away.
I would say it's unusual for families' preferences to be more than 2 miles away.
Okay. All right. So
partially due to the geography of Mill Valley.
Yeah.
I would say the upper range typically is around 1.5 miles from a preferred school. I have not done the calculations to back that data up. So I would really want to do more work to say that for sure. But thinking about and looking at this data a lot, just looking at people's rankings, I would feel fairly comfortable saying that most people are choosing a school 1.5 miles or closer to them.
Okay.
Or at least I should say the people enrolling are choosing as their first preference a school that is 1.5 miles or closer to them.
Because there seems to be, from the letters I read, there seems to be a lot of fear among people of certain neighborhood that, oh my God, other people are going to come into our neighborhood and my grandchild will not be able to attend our neighborhood school. I mean, so that's why I wanted to know exactly which school was the most impacted, because, you know, I want to make it clear it's not, you know, the certain schools that they think will have the most demand, but there has been a disproportionate, you know, number of families that were impacted with Tam Valley.
Yes.
So I want to make it very clear out there it has to do more demographic changes, not because of people's perceived preference. Oh, our neighborhood school is the best school, because they're all great.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're all great by evidence the fact that all of our kids go to different schools and we all think it's the best.
And test
So,
score,
there we go.
I think they're all the best.
I mean,
I go to all of them.
The test scores, everything else. Yes. So, I mean, yeah, you know, so I just want to make it out there that it was not, you know, for me, the issue is there fear that certain neighborhood schools are better considered. So everybody would want to go there. But the problem has been this year, it's been at Tam Valley, not at Old Mill and not at Park.
That's right. In most recent years, it has not been that the majority of families who are being displaced are from Old Mill and Park.
Okay.
That has not been the case.
Okay. So I want to dispel that misunderstanding out there, because it seems to be out there. Right.
I mean, we were displaced from Old Mill.
I know, but
So,
you were transferred. Just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, with this process, nothing changes for people who are in future rounds of registration. So whoever comes in first, that gets allocated first, capacity is met, and anybody who moves here at the end of the school year because they are trying to complete a school year with their kids in a different district, they are going to get the short end of the stick regardless.
Yes,
correct.
Except
that's our next effort to solve a problem. We haven't figured that out yet.
For the removal of the wait list means that the placement from round 1 and the confirmation of placement from those families means that those places are then confirmed for the following school year. And those families would wait until the intra-district open enrollment the following year. So then if we got a large influx of new families, those families would then have the opportunity to rank their choices, and the lottery would be in place for those round 2 or round 3 families. So there would potentially be an opportunity for those families at the schools that they prefer, rather than the placement of round 1 families prior to the families from round 2 or 3. Okay.
That's highly problematic. That means I sign up in round 1, and at that time you've only accounted for 2 classrooms worth at TAM, and then I get placed at a different school, and the family that moves 2 weeks before school, when we then have established higher capacity, would get to go in.
That is an impact of changing the policy in this way. But when
currently though, when people move in, they are displaced.
Yes.
To a neighborhood.
Yeah,
So it's not.
I mean, to some extent, I feel like if I'm round one, I started earlier, I should have priority over the round 3 that just showed up.
Well, so our scenario, we moved in end of round 2, and we had a sibling who was one place at Old Mill, one place at Etna, and because the wait list, we were all the way behind any other round 1 people, even though we had a sibling. And so,
but I don't think, I'm
but
not
it's
talking
also
about sibling, I'm talking about
but
the
it's
timing.
also, yeah, but it's also neighborhood school. I guess there's no, I don't know if this is another one of those factors where it's just based on timing. So based on the timing of when you determine there's additional capacity, then that impacts that family based on the timing of registration. And if you get into priority registration, that could positively impact or potentially negatively impact. And it's just an unbiased process.
I don't think we're talking about the same scenario. You're talking about siblings. I'm talking about just the general situation, like regardless of siblings or not, you move in round 2,
yeah,
and you get to swoop into your first choice school potentially when the person who in round 1, say they also have siblings, right? Same factors, who was in round 1 and prioritized a school that at that point didn't have the additional classrooms, you'd get into that school that they wanted and they wouldn't.
Which is why we had the wait list.
Yes.
But it creates
other
issues.
But it creates issues. I mean, like, look, I want to solve the problem for the handful of families, but I also don't want a handful of frustrated families to potentially, and I don't think they're doing this intentionally, but like that frustration cause us to repeal something that actually works, because honestly, a wait list sounds a lot simpler than an inter-district transfer that means that you're in round 1 or round 2 and you never get one of your top choices, whereas someone who comes later could. And I guess that's where, again, the bifurcating the problem, right? Like, can we solve the immediate concern without jumping to something that may have unintended consequences?
I mean, we can certainly take that back and look at that and see. I think, again, I'm thinking of a family that moved from Chicago this summer and there was no room for them and they got placed at a school they didn't want to be at. And, you know, I think one of the things when you do a neighborhood policy, not this policy, but a neighborhood policy, you cannot displace children. And so we either have to figure out how to hold spaces at the neighborhood schools and increase capacity based on demand, or I mean, generally what you do is you under enroll your classes and leave space for kids to enroll during the school year, which is, you know, a pretty typical practice in neighborhood schools. And we could do that as well. Part of it is the fact that we don't have a hard cap or soft cap. So typically you're like, okay, you can enroll at 20. So we're going to enroll it. We're not going to enroll, we're going to enroll 18 kids instead of 20 and hope that across the grade levels, when someone else comes in the summer, they go where they need to go. Here, they get a choice of where they want to go when they come. So it makes it that much harder to anticipate where to hold the spaces.
So getting into that level of granularity, where, like, what happens, you said, like, when they accept their school placement, so currently with the current process, they can choose to accept or request to be put on a wait list. What would the new process look like at that point if somebody was displeased?
They would accept or they would decline placement. So we also have families who decline placement in the district.
In the district altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what we're saying is that they would accept placement for the upcoming school year because we would not be functioning with a wait list any longer.
Okay.
Which is a typical practice in other districts as well, that you accept your placement for the next year rather than looking at a wait list.
Yeah, but we have parents who expect to get what they want.
We do.
And people are bound to be disappointed no matter what they get. So
yeah, I mean, here's my real concern. If we have to under enroll to make sure that we got the neighborly boundaries right and honor that neighborhood system, do we have the budget for it? Because last I heard, we are running $2 to $4 million per year deficit. So I don't know where the money will come to under enroll our kindergarten.
In general, right now, we don't have neighborhood schools defined. So that is the challenge, that we are not defining if someone moves in 0.1 miles away, if they're guaranteed a spot, or if someone moves 0.5 miles away, if they're guaranteed a spot, or if someone lives 2 miles away, but that's the closest school to them, if they're guaranteed a spot. We're not guaranteeing a spot for any of those people right now.
Can we afford to guarantee a spot given where our budget is by having a situation where one school, we under enroll all our classroom sizes. So now there are 18 kids in kindergarten, or 20 kids?
We definitely anticipate that we would not be, I mean, like, we know that we cannot hold a limitless number of spaces at every school, but when we get the demographer information back and we can hopefully better understand what those neighborhood schools are, then we would be looking at whether we could hold some spaces, but it is likely that families in later rounds could still be displaced from the school that they prefer in order to accommodate the right loading.
So when we get this data, I know it's far away. What I like to see is as our fourth, fifth grade class students get rolled into middle school, we're going to have more classroom capacity and hopefully more ability to fund this extra underfunded, under enrolled kindergarten classes. I like to see a little bit more information and data about affordability in our budget, because the positive is middle school has a certain number of classes. It's not going to be 20 kids per class in middle school. So hopefully we get rid of all these under-enrolled, not get rid of, they move out of the elementary system into middle school. And then is that going to create us, potentially more opportunity to under-enroll our kindergarten classes that we could honor the neighborhood boundaries?
I think one thing we want to note is that we don't have a class minimum or maximum. That's one of the things that's not in our bargaining language. Yeah. And so we don't really need to worry about, we can enroll as many as we want. We just pay overages. However, that is still a matter of practice that we're trying to say, look, if the 24th kid comes in, maybe that's the decision we make. Maybe we don't displace them, but we want to do that in a mindful way and look at the impact on classes, which is why if we staff at 21, or 22, we've still got additional space for additional kids to come in. So we're not necessarily under enrolled, but we can always increase. If we start with a small class, we can always add as students come in during the year.
And that's great in theory, but can we afford it is another question, because we are trying to, as far as I understand it, $2 to $4 million year deficit is a lot of money, and that adds up. If we are, that's one extra or two classrooms that we're talking about.
I think probably it's best to wait for the demographic study, because there's all sorts of ways of cutting those groups of 20 into 2 classes in the upper grade. I mean, there's all sorts of different factors that are impacting, if we run small classes at 22, they don't go into 2 classes at 24. So we have to look at what that looks like overall and look at what our catchment is for students before we can really define what the optimal class size is, what is the, optimal school size. And again, it may be that our enrollment matriculation patterns at some of our small schools are actually adding costs to us and increasing class size. So there may be other ways of looking at that, but we don't know without a demographic study.
Which is not coming till
the spring.
Okay, so you, end of the day, need some direction because something has to be done in November. Is that right?
So because we start enrollment in January and February, it's important that we're able to communicate how school placement will be done to those families enrolling in January and February.
So I would say for myself, what I would need, so my big concern right now is we've had a policy for 20-ish years and we still have confused parents. So the idea of this temporary interim thing where you can't even ask the person last year who did it. I mean, if people are confused with something that's been longstanding, and it worries me. So one would be how we would even relay this type of information. 2, I would love to see a kind of a side-by-side comparison of like if I went down door one, how my life, how my selection process would work versus door two. And then also going back to my original, like, I'd love to see it bifurcated. Like, is there a scenario? And it could be no, because what you're doing doesn't work right now. But I'd like to understand that more. Like, can I solve with a third classroom without touching this until we're ready with demographic information, or I have to do something in November. So that would be my request for information.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ellie. Sorry. Middle age break. I agree with Ellie. I mean, I'm worried that we're trying to help out 10% of our families who didn't get their school but upset 80% of the community. I mean, that is my biggest concern.
I mean, just so people know, we are getting a lot of feedback already from people.
Well,
yeah.
The other way.
One thing we haven't really talked about is traffic. And I think that's the community's concern. Yeah. It's the community that's not dropping off. They're just concerned about traffic. And I think right now the thought is everyone kind of goes to their nearest school. But if you looked at our scattergram, you'd see that actually is not true.
And it depends on grades. And
it depends on grade. It depends on grade. It depends on literally like mobility of the child. Like, will they walk? Will they bike? Are they driving? Are they scootering? Are they on a hill? Are they not on a flats?
I think we need to have a better understanding about potential impact of this on traffic, because there's more than parents who are part of this community, and it seems like a lot of people are concerned about potential traffic issue this may cause. And I think understanding exactly how many families we have that are farthest away who preferred, like I give Tam Valley to Old Mill kind of example, who have that, and maybe understanding that which school had the most, families wanting to place their children there, and that might really help. But what my concern right now is we're trying to, your data said, and this is a letter we received, 90% got placed under the old scenario, and then 90% will get placed under the new policy. So it's the same. So you get 10% unhappy, 10% unhappy, but then it happens so that more people apply to one school. Are we going to really upset even more than 10% of people, along with traffic and everything else concerns?
I mean, it feels like truly the only thing that might move the needle is increasing number of classes at a couple of sites to increase the likelihood that people are getting their preferred choices, which is totally separate and totally dependent on how many TKers there are and what kind of facilities we have available.
But and how many K students there are.
TK and K,
just K. Stay at their K school versus going.
But it's really moving from ranking 2 to ranking 5. So we have a better sense, because people are like, I didn't get my first or second choice. I feel like it would be beneficial to understand, like, did you get your last choice or your third choice? Where does this fall in terms of where we're being able to put you? And I already waxed poetic about the wait list being awful and that's very harmful to families and children. So
although to that point, like, shouldn't we understand, like, the inter-district transfer? I mean, I just want to make sure we don't glorify that that's somehow going to be so much easier.
Oh, it's not going to be easier, but what I do think is it gives people a sense of certainty. So if you are dependent on childcare after school, like, you need those spots available in aftercare to be able to plan for that. If those spots get filled up and you're on a wait list and then something opens up, you're kind of screwed. And so that becomes really hard. And there's the instability for your kids. So at least being able to say, like, we're going to suck this up for a year and hope that if we're still unhappy at this point in the next year, that we will apply for an inter-district transfer and then hopefully move to a preferred school. But it's just giving you some certainty for that year, where that life in purgatory is, it's it's not good.
Okay, this has been a long conversation. I knew it would be a long conversation. So I think right now my agenda says recommendation to bring policies back on consent, but there's a lot of things we've put out like, hey, we need more information about XYZ. I think thank you, Kate.
Sorry, thank you.
No, this has been a good
agendized item for the next meeting, so we can actually just discuss it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I've inundated you with data requests.
One last question, and then we're going to turn it off.
And just to clarify, relative to our current policy, truly it's moving from we're ranking 2 to we're ranking 5, and moving from wait list to in the year-long purgatory to intradistrict transfer if you still want to move at that point. And then if oversubscribed, if over capacity relative to demand, which may be resolved if we can add classrooms. But if we're over, then we're trying to approach it in an unbiased, more equitable way. Are those truly like
the random lottery?
Yes, but yes.
I mean, that's the other big change.
Yeah.
It's random lottery versus proximity based.
Yeah. Those are
I would agree
that
that's the summary.
Yeah.
I was like,
you.
wow, where were you a year ago? I would just say that, I remember I should say that, first of all, I appreciate everyone hanging in because there was a demand for transparency and it is a very confusing process. The most confusing I've seen in 13 districts. I honestly don't believe we'll make anyone happy. There's not going to be a world where everyone's happy no matter what we do.
The geography of Mill Valley does not lend to
everybody being happy. But again, I think it'll be, to be continued in terms of what we come up with. I do think that, we will go back and do some thinking and reflecting. My intention was to have it come back as a discussion, not a consent. Typically we bring revisions back, but in this case, so that's not real. But we may get to a place where we have to just say Kate and I are going to either remove the reg and try to do our best going into next year. And that may be a recommendation to you because, I don't know that we're going to find out exactly what we need to do by November 14th, which is our next board meeting. I think the 14th. So again, we have been thinking about this a lot. It's been a grave concern to me from the day I walked in and heard people being told no. And so the difference this year is we invited people to come tell us about no. And it has taken inordinate amounts of time, but I hope that it at least shows our transparency and our interest in hearing and trying to meet the needs of our families and also the complexity of the process, because we're only talking right now about choice. We haven't talked about capacity. We haven't talked about school class size. All of these are related, but really at the end of the day, we need to know what our demographics are, because we need to make some significant decisions about how and where we place students in our district for the long term. And until we know that, we are challenged to decide how many schools are even viable in our district and what configuration is really best for us in terms of maintaining our desire to have small class sizes, avoid combination classes, and still leverage our fiscal resources to the best we can. And that is a conversation which this will not answer.
Thanks. Okay, so with that, the recommendation is to bring it back as another agenda item. Okay, thank you, everyone. That was an intense conversation, but it was we had a lot of questions. And the next, we're going to go into our budget. And Paula.
In the board packet, I presented the budget update. So typically in past practice, the board would see budget revisions at first interim, second interim, and then for estimated actuals. And this is a new practice that we're going to be introducing starting from this month forward. We'll be doing a monthly budget revision and update so that the board is always more up to speed on what is taking place during the course of the month in regards to budget updates on revenues, expenditures, and anything that might be glaring or stand out. Sometimes you might see a month where there's not going to be a lot of changes, but this will allow the board to kind of see where the trends are. So in this current slide, you could actually see that from budget adoption to the end of September, we've already revised based on oh, sorry, just go to the last one. The last slide. Oh, all right. Hold on. Can you see? Yes, that's it. There you go. So on this slide, you could actually see this is the combined. When you go through the presentation, you'll see that I had a separate slide for unrestricted funds, restricted funds, and this is the combined, which is what we typically see during our budget presentations for first and second interim. And you can see at budget adoption, we were deficit spending at about 4.9, and during the course of budget adoption to now, based on some revenues for carryovers and expenditures that we've seen already, the changes, we've already changed the deficit to about a negative 4.18. So we're going to be just keeping you up to speed on what's going on with the budget based on what we have. So this.
Yeah. But on, yeah, sorry.
And I just want to say, this is going to be a routine item. So this will be an item where if trustees have a lot of questions, getting them to us ahead of time would be helpful so that Paula doesn't have to go item by item on these because it could be somewhat laborious to respond to.
And then I also attached the budget revisions. I know some people were wondering, what are those reports that are attached? And that is actually showing all of the individual budget transfers that took place during the course of that time span. And I'll be presenting those every single month. So you can see, you can dive deeper into the detail.
So trustee, did you have a question about?
Yes. I just want to highlight that a lot of the revenue, higher than revenue, came from higher than expected tax revenue, right? But we budgeted at 4% and it came at 7%, 6%.
For the 20, yeah.
But this year we're not running at that 7% level. So we're running it at 4%, 5% or 4%? No. Was it lower?
So currently, what the tax rolls are showing is a 4.7%.
Yeah. So that's actual numbers. So we are not going to have, your expectation is we're not going to have this sudden surplus because we were being conservative with our number. We're actually being realistic this time.
So as soon as I get any type of new tax rolls, any type of reports from the state, the federal on our revenues, you will see this on the monthly basis.
Okay.
And it is practice in Marin that's starting in January.
Good.
We have a really good relationship with the Department of Finance or the Treasury Department where they give us those rules on a monthly basis to help us build our budget. And you'll see that historically, they're always within a 1%. The only outstanding districts that there's a huge spike typically is Billina Stinson, just because for them, one huge sale of a property can give them like a 3% bump.
20 million.
They're a little, they're an outlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have to say I'm really concerned by these numbers. You know, and this is why I'm maybe unnecessarily be focused on classroom size. And when I hear we have to under-enroll kindergarten, I really have a heartburn because we have the constraint of maintaining AAA rating for our bond. And as you know, we're as a basic aid district, we have to maintain 30% reserves. And it seems like a lot of other basic aid districts actually have reserved more than 30%. And so I I really am concerned about this $4 million. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really harping on classroom size, everything else. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? I think we were looking for an approval on this item. Could I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we're going to go straight into an update about the budget advisory committee. So this is all tied in.
Yes. Yeah. So this year we're introducing a new committee to the district. In the past, we have had the CFAC as a group that provided recommendations. With the change in environment to our budget, we're moving to a different type of committee this year. So we have established a budget advisory committee, and the committee met for the first time on September 26th. It's formed, we're trying to have a collaborative group that represents our teachers, our classified staff, parents, PTAs, members from Kiddo, and the community. And then we have, as observers, we have our superintendent and a board member, which is Uni. And we have a mediator and presenter. So we have Scott Siegel, sorry, who worked with the district last year. So one of the main goals of this is, because our environment is changing, is really looking at establishing a budget reserve and bringing in, as you can see. So because we're community funded, it is really important that the reserves be high because of our cash flow issues. We really have to look at our revenues because we're so dependent on our property taxes and the money that comes in. We don't have a stable amount of money that comes in equally during the course of the year. Ours is based on twice a year we're getting our property taxes, and we're having to figure out our cash flow and all of our expenditures. That's one of the needs for reserves. Another is, because we are community funded and a huge percentage of our budget is from our parcel tax, we need to be able to maintain enough reserves to cover that type of budget. If our parcel tax were to not pass, that would be about 21% of our budget. And we should have enough reserves that would give us the ability to float for a year or two until we can pass a parcel tax, if that were to happen, because that would completely, I believe, change the status of the look of our schools if we were to lose 21% of our budget. So there's a lot of reasoning. We have this, we're hoping, I've been trying to get FICMAT, the CFO, Mike Fine, to come and present, and he will be presenting the importance of reserves, especially for community funded schools. I mean, just for state funded schools, LCFF, the recommendation currently is that you should have between 17 to 20%. They're saying keep about 3 months of your expenditures in unrestricted, but so for us, we are looking at more than that. We're looking at what's our shortfall if our parcel tax, our community funds that we have that could possibly end within a year, and also looking at what is our percentage for 3 months of funds of expenditures. So that's why you see a lot of community funded schools having reserves of 30% or plus. So, sorry.
And last time our parcel taxes did not pass by a huge margin.
Yeah.
So we have to show a lot of, in my opinion, fiscal discipline to show the community that, yes, you know, we deserve more money and we are not wasting community dollars.
Sorry. Oh, go next. Sorry. I've been kind of speaking to it. Just go to the next slides. So this is, I was talking about our membership. If you can click on the link.
Can you go back to membership for a second?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. So, how many members were in CFAC before?
or the old CPAC?
I am.
Don't remember.
I'd have to get that
I'm
number.
just wondering.
I think we were like
11 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have two from CFAC. Or okay, just sorry, that was just wondering about that. Okay.
And then if we can, so these are the topics that we're going to be discussing during the course, and some of the things that we talked about at our last meeting, which was our budget, the difference between community funded, LCFF, the historical reserve trends that we're seeing, and showing how we have gone from 40% plus, and we're already starting to drop, and where the trend is showing based on our current deficit, and if we were to continue and trying to maintain, you know, at least 30%. One of the things that did take place during our rating for our bond was they highly recommend us keeping that 21 to 22% just to maintain our revenues for the parcel tax. They made it very clear to us that that is what they're looking for. So if they were to see anything drop below that, that can really have the potential of changing our rating in the future. Okay, so and if you just know that you can go to the presentation, you'll start to see a lot of the slides. We're showing the historical change in our reserves from budget adoption to how we actually closed, and showing the trends. But what we're starting to see is the differences in our revenues, and really starting to have more budgets that align. That was something that we also saw in the patterns, is our budget adoption and how we actually closed showed some swings. And what we're hoping with doing this process of having a monthly budget adoption of our updates is being more on top of the trends during the course of the year, and using those numbers to staff and budget for the future. Okay. These are just our future upcoming meetings. Go back. Sorry.
If you don't mind going back one slide, one of the things we're trying to create is, again, the first slide referenced our audit findings, and we've talked a lot this evening about the fiscal reserve policy, but what we are really trying to provide the advisory committee the opportunity to engage in is really looking at what the fiscal reserve policy parameters and planning are, and then give the team some time to look at not only the reserve, but also budget deficit planning, and how we can look at ways of remedying the, deficit, depending on, when and how we address it. And then the thinking is ideally we would be bringing at our December board meeting the opportunity for us to consider a fiscal reserve policy, because I think it's going to be really important for us in budget development to know what that reserve is, and to be firm on that as a board and address that by policy. So that would be our December 16th meeting, I believe. But anyway, that's sort of, and then as we move forward, again, this is a committee that we want to have ongoing annually. So you'll see that we're going to work on the budget development and then recommendations in preparation for the LCAP.
Next steps. So we want to identify and approve our budget reserve levels, and get recommendations in regards to not just reductions, but different ways of looking at our budget. I've done this in the past in other districts, and one of the amazing things is that we all get to brainstorm, and we get to be creative, and we get to be part of it. I know that a lot of times we look at class sizes, or we look at all the programs, but being part of these groups and having different representatives from the community, it allows us to think differently and possibly have ideas that we would never thought of. So that's why we really encourage people to be part of this committee, because it will definitely be a collaborative way of looking at our budget and really trying to work to provide the current programs that we have. But we all know that there's a lot of things we want, but we always can't afford them. So trying to do what we can with the resources that we have. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. It's pretty quiet in here. Everyone heard me. That was information only. We're going to proceed to the next item. Thank you. J.
The GAN limit.
GAN limit. And then you could just update what was
Sorry.
the revision to this, right?
So I apologize, but at our last board meeting, we approved our GAN limit, but it was an error in our area is that we did not update the actual amount in the resolution to reflect what our GAN limit was in our SACs. So we were required by our county office to bring it back so that the resolution matches the amount of the GAN limit that was approved at our last board meeting.
The resolution.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any questions about this since we've already approved it, but it's a roll call vote.
All right. President Nakatani.
Aye.
Trustee Abdoli.
Aye.
Trustee Yu.
Aye.
I'm Trustee Katz, and I'm
Any
an aye.
motion is second.
Oh, second motion.
Sorry, I didn't call for a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Now it's a roll call vote. Sorry.
President Nakatani.
Aye.
Trustee Abdoli.
Aye.
Trustee Yu.
Aye.
I'm Trustee Katz, and I'm an aye.
Thank you very much. And we are going into facilities next. And thank you, facilities team, for waiting.
Sorry.
Almost. Oh gosh, I don't know.
It's going to be a long
Yeah, we're waiting well over an hour than your scheduled times. Thank you.
We do have two public comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Julio Arroyo, Director of Maintenance Operations and Safety with the Mill Valley School District. Here with me tonight with the CRMAR Program and Construction Managers is Brett Mitchell, Principal in Charge, and Sandrine Hitchcock, Program Manager, and with Nino and Moore, who are environmental consultants. It's Ryan Bass and Aubrey Cool. And so we are going to be discussing today an update on our Mill Valley Middle School project timeline, highlight topics to be addressed at the October 17th community meeting that we have coming up, and then give some information here from Nino and Moore about the environmental process, as well as give some additional information about their company and some projects that they worked on. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to pass over to Sandrine here to get started on the modernization timeline.
Good evening. Essentially, just wanted to give you a little update on the CEQA process and the EIR, which was started earlier this year. We've had encountered some delay in that process. So this is the updated schedule. We're looking right now at anticipated EIR notice of determination, which essentially is the end of the CEQA process, in July of 2025. That essentially means that the interim housing is unlikely, or any project is unlikely to happen or start in June of this year. And we'll provide more details as we keep going through the process.
So we'll hand it off to Nino and Moore next. So give an overview of the company, and part of, we have some recent feedback around different projects that they've worked on that we want to be able to update the school board on, and as well as talk about other components of the environmental process.
Yeah, so you guys hear me okay? So we understand that there have been some rumors of issues and some concerns brought up on other Nino and Moore projects, especially in Southern California. So you've seen these slides before. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but again, this shows our experience at landfills. And we do have a contract with Cal Recycle. They're the regulating body for landfills. We've been working with them since 2002. And they have renewed our contract 9 times so far. In the past, I think you guys had a question. The next slide shows the schools. Yeah, we're on that one. And you had a question about how many sites overlap. So we looked in our database, and we've got one school in Colorado that is on a landfill, and then most of them are in San Diego. There are 8 within San Diego Unified School District of schools that we have worked on for that school district that are landfills, former landfill sites. And so the next slide. So we've heard that there are concerns about these 2 projects in particular. So at Nino and Moore, we manage our projects locally. So Ryan and I don't have direct knowledge about these projects. They're managed out of our San Diego office. But that said, we're happy to answer questions as best we can and also address your concerns. The slide up here shows work that we have done on both of these projects. So at Bell Junior High, it's mostly groundwater monitoring. The Noah Webster Elementary is a project that's more similar to your project, where we did a removal action work plan and then did some remediation, and then did what we call a RACER, or remedial action completion report. And I know recently the DTSC rescinded approval of some of the documents here, specifically the remedial action work plan. And so what that was about is that the district decided at the end of the whole process not to record a land use covenant. And that was part of the agreement. That was an institutional control that was built into the remedial action work plan. And so the DTSC rescinded the approval. It's just a disagreement between the district and the DTSC. It's not a technical issue, and it doesn't have anything to do with the work that we did. It's just that for whatever reason, they decided they didn't want to record a deed restriction on their property. And so we've been working with San Diego Unified since 1995. They've reviewed our contract 6 times. And we have contracts for geotechnical and hazmat, hazardous materials services. So I think it's fair to say that the district is happy with our work for them on these projects. So that's all the stuff I have on the Southern California things. I think it's important that we want to talk about your project. We're trying to get you guys some current data so we can assess the current site conditions and then develop a plan. So Ryan is going to give you an update on the preliminary endangerment assessment.
Yeah, so currently on the PEA, we have been working through the process with DTSC and more recently with the LEA, as they also have some jurisdiction and some oversight on the testing that needs to be done, since it is the landfill and they oversee the landfill portion. So we've been working through different revisions to our work plan based on DTSC and the Marin County LEA local enforcement agency comments. And currently we have submitted our 4th revision to the work plan to address their comments, and it's with DTSC, who is currently reviewing the latest revision. And once they give their approval, then we are good to go ahead and implement our scope of work that we proposed. The LEA has already provided their approval of the scope of work that we proposed. So currently, as the slide is showing, PEA is in DTSC's eyes, it's a 3-step process. Step 1, we were able to forego because of previous data that was available on the landfill itself. So we were able to skip straight to step 2, which is the PEA, the process we're in now. And we've done the first couple tasks within the PEA, which was the district getting into environmental oversight agreement with DTSC, which has been fully executed, and then a scoping meeting with DTSC, kind of getting a high-level overview of the project before we submitted any reports to them. And then the current step we're at is the work plan is getting the approval from DTSC off the latest proposed scope. And then once we get that approval, we can go ahead and implement and actually do the testing and collect the samples and actually get data on the school site specifically. And then once we're done with that, then we'll be submitting a field report, summarizing all the data and making our recommendations for the next steps, as if potentially additional investigation, or if we recommend and DTSC agrees that no additional assessment is necessary, we can move to step 3 and discuss any remedial actions or mitigation measures that would be needed to develop the property. And this slide, it just shows a brief overview of what we'll be discussing in the community meeting next week. We're going to go into a lot more detail and specifics about what the PEA is going to entail, the type of samples, the number of samples, the locations, the chemicals we'll be looking for, and what we do with all that data and summarize it into a report and all the contents of that report that will be presented to DTSC and the LEA for review, and then also a public comment period on that report to review all the data that we have. So this slide is just a quick overview of what we'll be covering next week at the community meeting in more detail.
And just at the final portion there is just, we're going to have our general contractor, Flint, that's also going to talk about safety and mitigation measures and give examples during construction of what the community can expect and so forth. And that's our last slide.
Thank you. We will have, I'm sure, just probably a few board questions, but we're going to have 2 public comments before that. Chris Bailey and Juliet Hart.
Hi, Chris Bailey here. I think many of you guys know me. I think the first comment or request I make is that the district considers having AECOM and the other consultants present at these board meetings earlier in the process. I imagine many of these people are on T&M contracts, and this is running a large cost to have people sitting around for 3 hours. But the second request, I guess, would be if just we could post the additional slide that was just shared from, more on the agenda, because I think that was missing from the agenda. The main thing I wanted to highlight is the updated slide on the timeline now has the draft EIR coming out in February of 25. I wonder if it might be possible to see a draft of that earlier. I also have concerns about the draft EIR coming out in February and then a final being presented in July. That seems like a 5-month time period is extremely tight for an EIR of this complexity. Even with that timeline, previous estimates of the portables were a 7-month construction schedule. And so I'm not seeing the timeline of how a September, October move into portables can happen. When a 7-month construction timeline on portables would bring us to February of 26, and the portables can't be ordered before the EIR comes out in July. Overall, continue to be concerned that the plan is not going to be economically feasible, and just stress that we continually to look at alternatives in a real concerted effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Juliet Hart? Shilman?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Juliet, thank you for the chance to speak, for listening, and for your continued work to find a safe solution for a new middle school. On Tuesday, we sent you, the Supervisors Rodoni and Milton Peters, the City of Mill Valley, and all relevant state agencies, a letter signed by 203 signatories. Since then, we've had a few more people sign. For public record, we share our comments here. In that letter, we continue to urge you to reject any plan that includes interim housing of middle school students next to the construction project on top of a toxic site in a floodplain in a very high to high seismic liquefaction zone bordered by a high voltage power station, a smelly sewer plant, and an anticipated hazmat construction zone. Should that interim campus remain necessary, please ensure that the district studies the feasibility of repurposing the property previously occupied by Terra Marin for the interim campus. We request that the district appropriate consider alternative locations in detail for the permanent MVMS site, as is legally required under the EIR process. Require the district to present a clearly scoped plan for the entire Measure G project, including the middle school rebuild and interim housing, as well as the modernization. And we ask the city of Mill Valley to collaborate with the district, and for you to collaborate with the city to locate another interim or permanent campus site, including using land available within the city. I know there's some questions around the Superfund naming convention. As your FAQ points out, it is not on the current national priorities list, which is, of course, yes, as has been put there in the FAQ, not the technical, the official Superfund designation. The reason in 2003, when the EPA did their report, was that the site was deemed safe because it doesn't generate, store, or receive hazardous waste. We know that. The site is covered and paved, and the parking lots are all paved, and there's a soil cap of 2 to 3 feet. And the soil containing the elevated levels of metal are buried below. Also, as one person mentioned last month, it's correct that the Superfund designation is there to help. It's meant to, provide funding to a site. EPA only has so much money, only so many sites can make the NPL. All correct. With this project, we're talking about a major disruption of soils. This will trigger the EPA to reevaluate the site. That may put it on the priorities list. You don't need to have a PhD like me or be one of the many experienced engineers that come to all of these meetings. We don't even need to call it a Superfund site. What we know is the land below MVMS, which is currently capped, will be disrupted when the construction begins, and that land contains toxic materials, including lead and methane. We know the 2003 report found up to 6,500 parts per million of lead on site. The EPA says that it needs to be between 400 to 1,200 parts per million, so we're well above it. When you dig up that dirt, that soil with those high levels of lead will circulate no matter how much water you put on it. My kids,
thank you, Juliet.
my daughter.
Thank you. And then one more. Oh, Susan Dawson.
Hi, I'm Susan Dawson. I just returned from a memorable 4 days at Walker Creek, where I joined a fearless group of 5th graders from Old Mill, Park, and Edna. It wasn't easy, but it was such a remarkable program. So I wanted to first say thank you to the district for giving our kids that opportunity. I'm still wearing the bandana that my campers signed for me as a reminder to hold them near and dear to my heart as I speak to you tonight about my ongoing concerns about the plan to rebuild the middle school on top of a burn dump while housing these students and others next door. But let's talk numbers. Like many others, I want the Measure G funds to be used efficiently. I noticed that the July 25th DTSC comments on the notice of proposal warned, quote, "We recommend the district consider that a conservative remedial option may be necessary for evaluation in the EIR." This statement is striking because DTSC recently rejected a mitigation plan for the Noah Webster School in San Diego, ruling that the district there must either preserve the integrity of its soil cap, which is not an option for us here with liquefaction and floodplain, or remove all of its landfill material at a cost of about $33 million in 2013 dollars. In its January board deck, our district listed just $7 million for its site mitigation allowance. If DTSC were to require soil removal at MVMS as a conservative remedial option, that number would skyrocket, potentially up to $33 million or more. And that differential could derail the current plan. So, will DTSC require landfill soil removal? If so, then all the soft costs spent on the current plan will be wasted. Given this, it is imperative that the EIR examine the alternatives for both the interim and permanent campus in actionable detail, because the district might actually need a new plan should mitigation costs dramatically escalate. I therefore encourage the district to discuss the possible soil removal situation with DTSC as soon as possible, as that is a key threshold question right now. Until we know the answer to that, the district should halt further spending toward the current plan in order to preserve available funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, trustees. Trustee.
Yes. Are we not doing our due diligence? Just wondering, are we looking at the soil condition? And are we looking at any potential mitigation that might be greater than $7 million? And exactly what will be the scope of the work as the community seems to be so concerned that, you don't have the experience nor expertise to do this work.
So the issue at Noah Webster, again, it goes back to that land use covenant. And because the district didn't want to sign that and record that, then the DTSC said, if you don't put in the land use covenant documenting these conditions, then you have to remove the entire landfill. I don't think that that's anything like that would happen here. You don't dig up landfills and move them to another landfill. It's not something that you do. So this investigation, this PEA, is going to give us the information to answer those questions. It's going to tell us what the contamination levels are like at your site. And from there, then we can talk to the DTSC about what might be required. At this stage, there's not any new data. There's not data specific to your site. So we need to get that information, and then you have those conversations with the DTSC and the LEA. Remember that you guys are, you're regulated by two. You've got the DTSC and you've got the LEA. So
could you, as for a layperson, what is LEA?
So
and what is the role of DTSC versus LEA, and exactly what do they do?
Yeah.
And why do we think, I remember hearing from someone that if we were to build this in Texas, this building will cost $40 million, but we are in Mill Valley on the site, so it's going to cost us $200 million. So I just want to know, you know, my understanding is a lot of them is going to be regulatory and mitigation work. So could you explain to us exactly how detailed DTS is going to be and LEA is going to do? As a parent and as a board member, I think we kind of need to understand why we feel comfortable with what they will ask us to do.
Yeah, so DTSC oversees the schools program. So because you're a school that receives state funding, you're under DTSC regulation under their schools program. And so they're the lead agency and they're driving this investigation. The LEA is for the landfill. They're from Marin County. They're the lead, what's LEA?
Local Enforcement Agency.
There we go. I'm like lead. So they oversee the landfill parts of it. So looking at post-closure land use, and there are certain requirements for monitoring and that sort of thing. So we have to meet both criteria because you're both a landfill and a school. So those are the two different sides of it. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah, my second part is, why should we feel comfortable that we are overseen by these agencies, and what will they do to ensure that our students are safe through the construction and everything else? I mean, I think the general consensus is that somehow we, are going to bypass all the regulatory, concerns, or that we are not going to mitigate what we see. I mean, my understanding is we don't know what we don't know yet. And we are spending at this point all the money, correct, Elizabeth, that to make sure that we find out exactly what we need to find out and try to see if there are any ways of mitigating. So I just want to understand why, as a parent and as board members and as community members, we should feel comfortable that the process is going to protect our children.
Yeah, well, again, you're fortunate in that respect because you have both agencies, and that's their job. I mean, that the DTSC is looking out for the students and the community, and they have all the processes in place to make sure that the work is done safely. Same with the LEA on their side. Same with us and what we do. I mean, Ryan and I are both professional geologists, and our first responsibility when we have that stamp is to the public and to public safety. So safety and making sure that this is done right is the first step and the first priority for everybody working on this project. We work on these types of projects at residential redevelopment, and we're in communities all the time. So we understand about working in these conditions and making sure things are safe during construction and all of that. But yeah, that's what the DTSC and all these processes are in place for. And it's transparent. All the work gets submitted to the DTSC. They upload it all online. Everybody sees the back and forth, and you see all the concerns and everything that they bring up. So it's really a well thought out process. And again, you have both agencies working on it. So the scrutiny here is high, as it should be.
Students and our kids.
Yeah.
And I just want to note this. I know there are a lot of concerns for the children. I'm a mom of a 5th grader. I'm concerned. We're all concerned, and we want to do the due diligence, but I note that nobody's ever brought up the safety of our teachers, our employees and construction workers. And we also want to make sure that safety is not just about the children. There are multiple parties and members, community members involved. And I just want to highlight that we should keep that in mind as we go through the process. I'm just,
I do want to clarify that actually has come up.
Yeah.
And I think with Flint, they were saying that they have a
yeah, so we did Flint discuss.
I think
and the teachers,
The last meeting.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I think I'm talking about what is going on in the community. I mean, I think as a community, we need to be concerned about, it's not widespread. I agree with you, but I think we need to make sure that they are not just the students, but we have our employees and your construction workers. And we all have to be, and I know our teachers feel very, for the most part, that I understand, feel comfortable with the process. And clearly all you guys have experience protecting the safety of your children and your employees. And so I just want to make sure, get it out there that it's not just about the children. We do care more about everybody that we have to protect, and the process is there. And that is what I'm relying upon you. And I'm sure we are relying upon you because it's not just, it's the, I mean, the process is there to protect everybody.
Exactly. Yep. We're on site. I mean, Ryan's going to be out there on a drill rig collecting the data. And absolutely our health and safety plans cover exactly what you're talking about. We're kind of focusing on the students and the long term, but also during construction and during investigation, we make sure to take care of everybody who's on site, as well as, like I was saying, the larger community. When we work in residential neighborhoods, we have to keep an eye on dust and monitor all of these things. And you monitor the fence lines and you monitor your construction zone, and there are all of those processes in place as well to ensure the safety of everybody who's here.
Okay.
Short-term and long-term, like we're talking about.
Any other questions?
No, I appreciate the overlap with, because that was my question that had come up before about the school sites that are prior landfills. So that's very helpful to understand the level of experience you've had with that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I appreciate it. I know you guys are still exploring all the potential sites, making sure that we really dive into every option. So thank you for exploring all of those choices.
I just have two pretty quick questions. So going back to our schedule, like this is news that we have a shift in our schedule. And originally, didn't we get preliminary GTS approval for the borings? And then it was the LEA who came in and said, well, we actually want, if maybe you could, instead of me trying to reiterate what I remember, could you quickly go over how that has affected this timeline?
Sure.
And the reasons why?
Yeah, so you're correct. We did get initial conditional approval from DTSC. And then that's when after that, or right before that, the LEA provided their comments, came in and said we would also like to see the PEA work plan and provide our oversight on it. And then they submitted their comments shortly right before DTSC gave their conditional approval. So that triggered us to revise the work plan to address LEA comments, and it had to go through a whole new resubmittal process to DTSC. Because we have two regulatory agencies, that's one of the complications with the site, is getting approval and getting both agencies on board with the work. So when you have one agency requesting comments, you have to revise your proposed scope and then has to go back to both agencies again to make sure that they both approve. And with that process, they just initiated some revisions to the report, which ended up giving the LEA's approval, and then the DTSC had additional comments based off of the revised report. But now that we have the LEA's approval,
Okay, yeah, that's why you're on revision 4.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's the delay. That makes a lot of sense. The LEA submitted, was that out of the norm for the LEA to come back and at the sort of the 11th hour and be like, oh yeah,
so
I want another.
Our initial understanding was we knew the LEA would have some type of, before we submitted anything to DTS or anything like that, we had been in contact with the LEA and asked what they would need to see if they need to review the work plan as well. And at first they said no, because DTSC is the lead regulatory agency. So what DTSC we're good with that. And then when we started going through the process, that's when the LEA came on board and said, actually, no, we do need to see the PEA work plan. So initially we had assumed there might have been a chance, but then we talked to them before we started this process with DTSC and they said they wouldn't need to see it. So we moved forward assuming they didn't need to see anything. And then once the process was already underway, they came back and said, actually, no, we do need to see it.
So I'm a total lay person, sorry. So what exactly information is in the work plan that you guys are all going back and forth
So
about?
we're going to go into detail next week, but I can tell you now it's about pretty much all the boring locations that we're proposing, the type of samples we're collecting, groundwater, soil vapor, soil, what we're analyzing for, how we're going to interpret those results, what we're going to do with the interpretations of the results, all the figures, everything that's going to be included in the report. So it's just a detailed document that describes exactly what our investigation is going to do and look for and how it's going to be analyzed.
One of the challenges is that these agencies kind of come at things from different angles. Because the LEA only does landfills, they have an idea, like the two agencies don't agree on how you build a soil vapor well, because the LEA is looking at it for one thing and the DTSC is looking at it for something else. So that's just kind of one of the challenges is once they start going, you just want to get them in a room together and be like, sit down and talk about it and figure out what you want. So they both have different things that they want to monitor for. And like I said, different boring, they wanted different borings in different locations. They're interested in different contaminants. So yeah, once you start going and you change one thing, then the other agency wants to pile on, and it got a little crazy.
So am I wrong as a total lay person? I didn't even know what LEA was before. that between the two agencies, they will have pre-extensive requirements for testing and work plans that we could be assured that will catch most potential hazards and risks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's it.
Well, I want to just echo what Ellie said, and I appreciate you guys looking into. Obviously, we've got our primary site. We've got all alternatives that we're looking at. We have some twists and turns that have come up along the way, and we're just rolling with the punches. So appreciate everything that you're doing and take the positive view that maybe by having more hands involved and different perspectives being taken, that it's just going to help ensure that everything is that much better in the end.
So how does this impact the construction timing and expenditures of our funds?
I think we're gonna move on.
Yeah, no, like the timing, like is it because we have 2 months delay, right?
I don't think,
Yeah.
I don't think.
No.
These are,
We're done.
when this kind of stuff happens, it's an ish.
Okay.
So,
all right.
There's a lot ish,
there's
right?
a lot of ish.
Okay, so we don't know nothing.
We've been there.
Architect terms.
It's a book. It's a little kid's book, right? Ish. It applies through the rest of your life.
I'm gonna get it.
Thank you very much. And thank you for waiting. We had a long conversation about our enrollment and everything. So I really appreciate you staying, and it's thank you again. And with that, we have future board items, which was due for 7:45. Do we have any future, what's that? Yeah, we have future board items and board reports. I don't know if anyone has board reports, if we're just gonna, we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. I'm pretty good too. You good?
I'm really good. Thank you for indulging the enrollment conversation.
Well, that
I felt it needed to happen.
It had to happen. It had to happen, and we.
I mean, also just like you can tell there was like disconnect on like what A does to B, and I don't think people see how it all connects.
It's so hard to explain. I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah, that's why we do need to take the time on occasion to have very, very long conversations about certain things.
About children.
Because in the end, that's the most important thing. We will adjourn at 9:26. Thank you everyone for staying.